The Owl Service by Alan Garner. Read by Robert Powell. How's the bellyache, then? Gwyn stuck his head round the door. Alison sat in the iron bed with brass knobs. A bore, said Alison. And I'm too hot. Tough, said Gwyn. I couldn't find any books, so I brought one I had from school. I'm supposed to be reading it for literature. Looks deadly. Thanks anyway, said Alison. Roger's gone for a swim. Gwyn, said Alison, can you hear that noise in the ceiling? Listen. The house was quiet. Mostyn Lewis-Jones was calling after the sheep on the mountain, and something was scratching in the ceiling above the bed. Mice, said Gwyn, or rats? No, listen, it's something hard. They want their claws trimming. It's not rats, said Alison. I heard it the first night I came, and every night since. That's rats, said Gwyn. As bold as you please. No, said Alison, it's something trying to get out. The scratching's a bit louder each night, and today it's been scratching when the pain's bad. Isn't that strange? You're strange, said Gwyn. He stood on the bed and rapped the ceiling. You up there, buzz off. The bed jangled as he fell and landed hard and sat gaping at Alison. His knocks had been answered. Gwyn, do it again. Gwyn stood up. Knock, knock. Scratch, scratch. Knock, scratch. Knock, knock, knock. Scratch, scratch, scratch. Knock. Knock, knock. Scratch. Scratch, scratch. Gwyn whistled. Hey, he said. These rats should be up the grammar at Abridged. He jumped off the bed and opened a door by the bedroom chimney. It was a narrow space like a cupboard, and there was a hatch in the ceiling. We need a pair of steps and a hammer, said Gwyn. The bolt's rusted in. I'll go and fetch them from the stables. Don't be long, said Alison. I'm all jittery. He came back with the step-ladder, hammer, and a cage trap. It's painted right over, he said. No one's been up for years. Oh, that's it. The bolt broke from its rust. That shut the racket anyway. As he said this, the scratching began on the door over his head, louder than before. You don't have to open it, said Alison. Gwyn, be careful. It sounds so sharp. Strong and sharp. Gwyn brought a dry mop from the landing and placed the head against the door in the ceiling. The scratching had stopped. He pushed hard, and the door banged open. Dust sank in a cloud. It's light, said Gwyn. There's a pane of glass let in the roof. Do be careful, said Alison. Is there anybody there? Said the traveller. Yara wara 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 wara. Gwyn brandished the mop through the hole. Nothing. See? He climbed until his head was above the level of the joists. Alison went to the foot of the ladder. Lot of muck and straw. Coming? No, said Alison. I'd get hay fever in that dust. There's a smell, said Gwyn. A kind of scent. I can't quite... Yes, it's meadow sweet. Funny that. It must be blowing from the river. The slates feel red hot. Gwyn braced his hands on either side of the hatch and drew his legs up. It's only a place for the water tanks and that, he said. No proper floor. Wait a minute, though. Where are you going? Be careful. Alison heard Gwyn move across the ceiling. In the darkest corner of the loft, a plank lay over the joists, and on it was a whole dinner service. Squat towers of plates, a mound of dishes, and all covered with grime, straw, droppings, and blackened pieces of birds' nests. What is it? Said Alison. She had come up the ladder and was holding a handkerchief to her nose. Plates, masses of them. They're nice, green and gold, shining through the straw. Bring one down, and we'll wash it. Alison saw Gwyn lift a plate from the top of the nearest pile, and then he lurched and nearly put his foot through the ceiling between the joists. Gwyn? Is that you? Whoops! It's so blooming hot up here it made me go skin-eyed. He came to the hatch and gave Alison the plate. I think your mother's calling you, said Alison. Gwyn climbed down and went to the top of the stairs. What do you want, ma'am? Fetch me 2 letters from the kitchen garden. His mother's voice echoed from below. And be sharp now. Gwyn pulled a face. He put the cage trap into the loft and closed the hatch. You clean the plate, he said to Alison, I'll be right back." Roger splashed through the shallows to the bank. A slab of rock stood out of the ground close by him, and he sprawled backwards into the foam of meadowsweet that grew thickly round its base. The only sounds were the river and a farmer calling sheep somewhere up the valley. The mountains were gentle in the heat. The ridge above the house, crowned with a grove of fir trees, looked black against the summer light. He breathed the cool, sweet air of the flowers. He felt the sun drag deep in his limbs. Something flew by him, a blink of dark on the leaves. It was heavy and fast, and struck hard. He felt the vibration through the rock, and he heard a scream. Roger was on his feet, but the meadow was empty, and the scream was gone. He caught its echo in the farmer's distant voice and a curlew away on the mountain. There was no one in sight. His heart raced, and he was cold in the heat of the sun. He leaned against the rock. The mountains hung over him, ready to fill the valley. His skin was rough with gooseflesh. Now what the heck was that? Acoustics? Tricky acoustics? And those hills? They'd addle anyone's brains. He pressed his back against the rock. Hello? There was a hole in the rock. It was round and smooth, and it went right through from one side to the other. Has it been drilled on purpose, or is it a freak? He thought. Gosh, what a fluke. He had lined himself up with the hole to see if it was straight, and he was looking at the ridge of fir trees above the house. The hole framed the trees exactly. Put some clothes on. Roger walked up through the garden from the river. Hugh Halfbacon was raking the gravel on the drive in front of the house and talking to Gwyn, who was banging lettuces together to shake the earth from the roots. "Lovely day for a swim," said Hugh. "Yes," said Roger. "Perfect." "You were swimming," said Hugh. "That's why I'm wearing trunks," said Roger. "It's a lovely day for that," said Hugh. "Swimming?" "Yes." "In the water?" said Hugh. "I've got to get changed," said Roger. "I'll come with you," said Gwyn. "I want to have a talk." They sat on the terrace. "That man's gaga," said Roger. "He's so far gone he's coming back." Below them the river shone through the trees. "Something happened just now," said Gwyn. "There was a scratching in the loft over Alison's bedroom." "Mice," said Roger. "That's what I said. But when I knocked to scare them away, they knocked back." "Get off." "They did. So I went up to have a look. There's a pile of dirty plates up there. Must be worth pounds." "Oh, that's interesting. Have you brought them down?" "One. Alison's cleaning it. But what about the scratching?" "Could be anything. These plates, though, what are they like?" "I couldn't see much." "Why were they up there?" "I asked Hugh about them, and he said, 'Mind how you're looking at her.'" "Who? Ali?" "I don't know who he meant. When I told him I'd found the plates, he said that. 'Mind how you're looking at her.' Then you came. I tell you, the man's off his head. Why's he called Half-Bacon, anyway?" "It's the Welsh. Hugh Hannahob," said Gwyn. "Hugh Half-Bacon. Hugh the Flitch. He's called both." "Roger, there's one more thing. I don't want you to laugh." "Okay." "Well, when I picked up the top plate, I came over all queer. A sort of tingling in my hands, and everything went muzzy. And when I could see straight again, it was different somehow. Something had changed." "Like when you're watching a person who's asleep and they wake up," said Roger. "They don't move, nothing happens, but you know they're awake." "That's it," said Gwyn. "That's it, exactly." "Can you tell me anything about the rock with a hole through it down by the river?" said Roger. "It'll be the stone of Gronw," said Gwyn. "What do you want to know for, anyway?" "I was sunbathing there," said Roger. Roger changed quickly and went up to Alison. She was bending over a plate which was covered with a sheet of paper, and she was drawing something with a pencil. "I've nearly finished," said Alison. She kept moving the paper as she drew. "There. What do you think of that?" She was flushed. Roger took the plate and turned it over. "No maker's mark?" he said. "Pity. I thought it might have been a real find. It's ordinary stuff, thick, not worth much." "Thick yourself. Look at the pattern." "It's an abstract design in green round the edge, touched up with a bit of rough gilding." "Roger, you're being stupid on purpose. Look at this part. It's an owl's head." "Yes, I suppose it is, if you want it to be. 3 leafy heads with this kind of abstract flowery business in between each one." "It's not abstract," said Alison. "That's the body. If you take the design off the plate and fit it together, it makes a complete owl. There you are. It's an owl. Head, wings, and all." She began to cut round the design with a pair of scissors. When she'd finished, she pressed the head forward, bent and tucked in the splayed legs, and perched the owl on the edge of her candlestick. Roger laughed. "Yes, it is. An owl." It was an owl. A stylized, floral owl. It glared from under heavy brows. "That's really good," said Roger. "How did you think it all out?" "I saw it as soon as I'd washed the plate," said Alison. "It was obvious." "I'd never have thought of it," said Roger. "I like him." "Her," said Alison. "You can tell? OK, her. I like her." He tapped the owl's head with the pencil, making the body rock on its perch. "Hello there." "Don't," said Alison. "Don't touch her." "Are you all right?" "Give me the pencil. I must make some more," said Alison. "I told you be sharp with them lettuce," said Gwyn's mother. "You been back to Aber for them?" "I was talking," said Gwyn, "to Roger." "You was talking to Half-Bacon. I got eyes." "I only stopped for a second." "You keep away from that old fool, you hear me? I'm telling you, boy," said his mother. "You were speaking Welsh, too." "Hugh doesn't manage English very clever. He can't say what he means." "You know I won't have you speak in Welsh. I've not struggled all these years in Aber to have you talk like a labourer." "But, ma'am, I got to practice. It's exams next year." "If I'd known you was going to be filled with that squit, you'd never have gone the grammar." "Yes, ma'am, you keep saying." "What was you talking about, then?" "I was only asking Hugh if he could tell me why those plates were in the roof above Alison's room." The silence made Gwyn look round. "You not been up in that roof, boy?" "Yes. Alison was a bit bothered, so I went up and found these plates. I didn't touch, only one. She's cleaning it." "That Alison," said Gwyn's mother, and made for the stairs. Gwyn followed. They heard Alison and Roger laughing. Gwyn's mother knocked at the bedroom door and went in. Alison and Roger were playing with 3 flimsy cut-out paper models of birds. The plate Gwyn had brought from the loft was next to Alison's pillows. Alison pushed it behind her when Gwyn's mother came in. "Now, Miss Alison, what's this about plates?" "What plates, Nancy?" "You know what I mean, Miss Alison. Them plates from the loft." "What about them?" "Where are they?" "There's only one, ma'am," said Gwyn. "Gwyn," said Alison. "I'll trouble you to give me that plate, miss." "Why?" "Excuse me," said Roger. "I've things to do." He ducked out of the room. "Thank you not to waste my time, Miss Alison. Please do give me that plate." "Nancy, you're hissing like an old goose. Please do give me that plate, Miss Alison." "Whose house is this, anyway?" said Alison. Gwyn's mother drew herself up. She went over to the bed and held out her hand. "If you please. I seen where you put it, under your pillow." Alison sat stiffly in the bed. Gwyn thought that she was going to order his mother from the room, but she reached behind her and pulled out the plate and threw it on the bed. Gwyn's mother took it. It was a plain, white plate, without decoration. "You've caused a right barney," said Roger. "Your mother's had a fit of the vapours, and Nancy's given my dad a notice 3 times. "Why doesn't he accept it?" said Alison. "You should know Dad by now," said Roger. "Anything for a quiet life. But you'd a nerve working that switch on her. Pity she knew the plates were decorated. How did you manage it?" "I didn't," said Alison. "That was the plate I traced the owls from." "But Gwyn says you gave Nancy an ordinary white one." "The pattern disappeared." "Ally, it's not possible," said Roger. "The plate was glazed. The pattern was under the glaze. It couldn't rub off." "But it did," said Alison. "But it couldn't, little stepsister. I'll show you." Roger climbed the ladder and opened the trap door. "Can you see the plates?" said Alison. "They're in a corner over to your left." "Yeah. I'll bring a couple to prove they're all the same." "Bring more, as many as you can." "Better not," said Roger, "after the tiz." "Mind the joists," said Alison. "Gwyn nearly fell through the ceiling there. It was queer. He slipped when he touched the plate, and he went all shadowy. Just for a second it didn't look like Gwyn." "It's the darkest part of the loft," said Roger. They washed the plates. Roger scrubbed the glaze with a nail brush. "The glaze is shot," he said. He picked at it with his fingernail. "It comes off easily." "All right," said Alison. "I want to trace these owls before the light goes." "Not more," said Roger. "Why do you want more? Where are the 3 you did earlier?" "I couldn't find them." "If you're going to start that drawing again, I'm off," said Roger. "Shall I take your supper things down?" "I've not had supper," said Alison. "Hasn't Dad been up with your tray?" "No." Roger grinned. "Your mother sent him to do the stern father act. He's not come." "Good old Dad," said Roger. Roger went downstairs and out through the kitchen to the billiard room at the back of the house. His father was playing snooker by himself in the dusk. A supper tray was on an armchair. "Hello, Dad," said Roger. "Jolly good," said his father. Roger sat on the edge of the chair. "This room was the dairy, wasn't it?" he said. "Oh, yes, I dare say." "Gwyn was telling me. He thinks it might have been the original house before that." "Fancy that," said his father. "Yes. Rum old place, this." "It's that oldie-worldy wall panelling that gets me," said Roger. "I mean, why cover something genuine with that phony stuff? And why go and pebble-dash a piece of the wall? Pebble-dash, inside." A rectangle of wall near the door was encrusted with mortar. "Damp?" "The walls are a yard thick." "Still," said his father, "must be some weakness somewhere. It's cracked." "Is it? It wasn't this morning." "Right across, near the top." "That definitely wasn't there this morning," said Roger. "I was teaching Gwyn billiards. We tried to work out what the pebble dash was for. I looked very closely. It wasn't cracked." "Ah, well, it is now," said his father. "Not much use doing any more tonight. Let's pack up." "Would you like me to take Allie her supper?" said Roger. "Yes. No. I said I would. I'd better. Margaret thinks I ought. She's a bit upset by the fuss. Phew, that was a real up-and-downer while it lasted. But a fiver cures most things. Nancy's dead set against some plates or other. I didn't understand what any of it was about. No, I'd better go and chat up old Allie." Alison was cutting out the last owl when she heard her stepfather bringing the supper tray. She had arranged the plates on the mantelpiece and had perched the owls about the room as she finished them. "Grub up." He put the tray by the bed and lit the lamp. "I say, these are jolly fellows. What are they?" "Owls." "Well, how are the gripes?" "Much better, thanks." "Good." "What sort of a day did you and Mummy have?" said Alison. "Didn't catch anything, and one of the waders leaked. But I've great hopes of tomorrow. Old Half-What's-It says he knows a stretch of the river where they always bite." "Have you been sent to tell me off about Nancy?" "What? Oh, said Clive. "I don't know why she was going on like that," said Alison. "Gwyn found some of those plates in the loft, and she came storming up as if she owned the place." "Yes, well, old Nancy, you know." "But she went berserk, Clive." "Too true. We had a basin full when we came home, I'll tell you. Your mother's very upset. She says you ought to... Oh, well, skip it." "But it's my house, isn't it?" said Alison. Yes, but it's a bit dodgy. If your father hadn't turned it over to you before he died, your mother would have had to sell this house to clear the death duties." "But it's still my house," said Alison, "and I don't have to take orders from my cook." "Fair dues," said Clive. "Think of your mother. It was hard enough to get someone to live in all summer. If Nan swept out, we'd never find a replacement, and your mother would have to cope by herself. She'd be very upset. And it is the first time we've all been together, as a family, and, you know." "Yes, Clive, I suppose so." "That's my girl. Now, eat your supper. Hello, sounds as if we've mice in the roof." "Don't wait, Clive," said Alison. "I'll bring the tray down in the morning. Tell Mummy not to worry." "That's my girl. God bless." "And the room was cold," said Roger, "but it was the noise that was worst. I thought the ceiling was coming in, and there were scratchings going on round her bed too, on the wall, and then on the iron, and her supper tray. Is that what you heard when you went up the loft?" "No, not as bad," said Gwyn, "but she said it was getting louder. What did you do, man?" "I called her, but she was fast asleep." "You know how hot it was last night," said Roger. "I couldn't sleep, and I kept hearing this noise. I thought she was having a nightmare, so I went up." "The noise was in the loft? You're sure?" "Positive. It was something sharpening its claws on the joists or trying to get out, and either way it wasn't funny." "Then what?" "Nothing. I funked out," said Roger. "I couldn't stand it." "Where is she now?" "She said she was going to find her paper owls. She's obsessed with those futile birds." "Them off the plates?" said Gwyn. "Yeah. Do you know how they got into the loft?" "My mum won't say anything about them. She's that mad. And the switch Alison put across her. By, it's making her talk like a Welsh nationalist." "Ali says she didn't switch the plate." "Pull the other," said Gwyn. "It's got bells on." "But she didn't switch. Listen, I fetched 2 more down from the loft, and when I went into Ali's bedroom last night, they were on the mantelpiece. The pattern's gone." "How did you know?" said Alison. She stood at the door of the billiard room with the plates in her hand. "I was coming to show you." I thought I heard you having a bad dream last night," said Roger. "So I popped in. The plates were on the mantelpiece." "Yes. They're the same, aren't they?" said Gwyn. "Well, now, there's a thing." "How can it happen?" said Alison. "Is it tracing the owls that makes the plates go blank?" "What did you use?" said Roger. "Pumice?" "Let's see the owls," said Gwyn. "I haven't any," said Alison. "They keep disappearing." "This is ridiculous," said Gwyn. "Has your mother said anything?" said Alison. "Not that can be repeated, except she's made it a condition of saying that the loft's nailed up permanent." "Today?" "Now there she's hoist by her own petard, like. It's stupid. She won't let Hugh half-bacon in the house. So if I measure the hatch, then Hugh makes a cover and I nail it up. We can spin that out till tomorrow between us. Plenty of time to bring the plates down, isn't it?" "How about leaving them where they are?" said Roger. "We can't," said Alison. "I must make some owls." Roger shrugged. "We'll have to be a bit crafty," said Gwyn. "Mum's propped the kitchen door open. She'd hear us easy if we tried to carry them down." "That woman!" cried Alison. "She's impossible." "I know what you mean, Miss Alison," said Gwyn. There was a scream from the kitchen. "That's Mum," said Gwyn, and they looked out of the billiard room. Nancy appeared at the outside door of the larder with a broken plate in her hands. "Oh!" she shouted. "Oh! Throwing plates now, are you? That's it, that's it, that's it, miss, that's it. I was not engaged to be thrown at. Spite, Miss Alison. I'm not stopping here." "It was me," said Gwyn. "I was fooling about. I didn't see the door was open, and I didn't see you there. The plate slipped. Sorry, ma'am." Nancy said nothing, but stepped back and slammed the door. Gwyn beckoned the other 2 away. "Thanks, Gwyn," said Alison. Gwyn looked at her. "I couldn't help it," she said. "Couldn't you?" said Gwyn. "I'd better go and butter up the old darling. Don't worry, I can handle her all right. I'll buy her a packet of fags to keep her happy. You go and square your family. Get in first, just in case. I'll calm Mum down, and then we'll see to the loft." "But what happened then?" said Roger. "That plate was the one she took from Ali's room yesterday, wasn't it?" "I know," said Gwyn. "Where are the others?" "I put them on the billiard table," said Alison. "I'll pick them up on my way back," said Gwyn. "Who's going to deal with which?" Alison said to Roger as they walked across the lawn. "We'll each tackle our own, I think, in this case," said Roger. "Mummy's sunbathing on the terrace," said Alison. "Right. Dad's in the river somewhere, I expect, trying out his puncture repairs. Peculiar business, isn't it? You know, just before Nancy yelled, when you were letting off steam about her, a crack went right through that pebble dash in the billiard room. I saw it. Peculiar, that." Gwyn walked slowly. The plate had been on the dresser in the kitchen. His mother had been in the larder. A difficult shot. Who could have done it? The smash in the billiard room was like an explosion. Gwyn ran. The fragments of the plates lay on the floor. They had hit the wall where it was pebble-dashed, and the mortar was laced with cracks. Gwyn gathered up the pieces. The morning sun came through the skylights and warmed the oak beams of the roof. A motorcycle went by along the road above the house. Gwyn heard something drop behind him, and he turned. A lump of pebble dash had come off the wall, and another fell, and in their place on the wall, 2 eyes were watching him. Gwyn said he'd done it. I don't think she believed him, but she had to shut up. "Good," said Clive. "His head's screwed on." "Yes, Gwyn's all right," said Roger. "None of us chucked the plate." "He probably fell, and the old girl thought someone had buzzed her," said Clive. "That seems to have fixed me puncture." He lumbered out of the river, dry as a bone. "Have you seen this, Dad?" said Roger. He was sitting on top of the upright slab. "This hole, it goes right through." "So it does. Machine told, I'd say. Lovely job. Seems a rum thing to do out here in the wilds." "Have a squint up towards the house." Roger's father put his hands on his knees and bent to look through the hole. "Well, I never," he said. "Fancy that." "It frames the top of the ridge and the trees, doesn't it?" "Like a snapshot." "That's the point," said Roger. "I wonder if it's possible. You'd need a heck of a focal depth. It'd be interesting, technically. You're off shopping today, aren't you?" "Yes, back after tea, I expect. That's the drag of this place. It's a day's job every week." "I'll need a different film and paper," said Roger. "Can you buy it for me?" "Surely." Gwyn locked the billiard-room door. Then he went to the stables. When he came to the yard, he saw Hugh leaning on his shovel, and something about him made Gwyn stop. Hugh stood with 2 fingers lodged in his waistcoat pocket, his head cocked sideways. He was talking to himself, but Gwyn could not hear what he said, and he was dazzled by the glare of the sun when he tried to find what Hugh was looking at. Then he saw. It was the whole sky. There were no clouds, and the sky was drained white towards the sun. The air throbbed, flashed like blue lightning, sometimes dark, sometimes pale, and the pulse of the throbbing grew. And now the shades followed one another so quickly that Gwyn could see no more than a trembling which became a play of light on the sheen of a wing. "There's Daft," said Gwyn. He went up to Hugh Half-Bacon. Hugh had not moved, and now Gwyn could hear what he was saying. "Come, apple-sweet murmurer, come, harp of my gladness, come, summer, come." "Hugh? Come, apple-sweet murmurer, come, harp of my gladness, come, summer, come." "Hugh? Come, apple-sweet murmurer, come, harp of my gladness, come, summer, come." Hugh looked at Gwyn. "She's coming," he said. "She won't be long now." "Mum says you're to make a board to nail over the loft in the house," said Gwyn. "If I measure up, can you let the job last till tomorrow? We need time to bring the plates down without Mum finding out." "Be careful." "Don't you worry. I'll do that for you," said Hugh. "Why has Mum taken against you?" "You better ask her. I've no quarrel." "She's been away from the valley all these years. You'd think she'd have got over any old rows." "Perhaps she's afraid in the English way," said Hugh. "But if they think I'm weak in the head, they should have seen my uncle and grandfather. They would lock in their brick walls." "Why?" "Grandfather," said Hugh. "He went mad down through the wood by the river." "Here?" said Gwyn. "The wood in the garden where it's swampy?" "Yes. We don't go there." "Really? Really mad?" said Gwyn. "That's what the English said. They would not let him stay here. He lost his job." "The English? Wasn't the house lived in properly even then?" "They come for a while and go," said Hugh. "But they would not let grandfather stay in the valley." "What happened to him?" "He walked away. He sent those plates. He was working in the big potteries, and he decorated the plates and sent them to the house. And a letter to say he was all right now." "But why were they put in the loft? And why did Mum have hysterics when I found them?" "Ask her," said Hugh. "Perhaps there's always talk in a valley." "Is there anything needed for the house while we're out shopping, Half-Bacon?" Roger and his father came into the yard. "No, sir," said Hugh. "We're not wanting any stuff." "Good," said Clive. "I'll be off then. Funny rock you have in the meadow, Half-Bacon. Who drilled the hole in it?" "It is the stone of Gronw," said Hugh. "There is a man being killed at that place all time." "Was there now?" "Yes," said Hugh. "He's been taking the other man's wife." "That's a bit off, I must say," said Clive. "Yes, sir," said Hugh. "He is standing on the bank of the river, see? And the husband is up on the bryn with a spear, and he's putting a stone between himself and the spear is going right through the stone and him." "Why did he stand there and let it happen?" said Roger. "Because he killed the husband the same way earlier to take the wife." "Tit for tat," said Clive. "These old yarns, eh? Well, I must be off." "Yes, sir. That is how it is happening all time." "Fine," said Clive. "Well, cheerio." "I was beginning to believe that maundering old liar," said Roger. "Hugh wasn't lying, not deliberate," said Gwyn. "What? A spear making that hole, thrown all the way from those trees by a stiff? Hugh believes it." "You Welsh are all the same," said Roger. "Scratch one and they all bleed." "What happened to you yesterday by the stone of Gronw?" said Gwyn. "You knew what I meant when I was trying to explain how it felt when I picked up a plate, and then you started talking about the stone out of nowhere." "It was a feeling," said Roger. "One minute everything's okay, and the next minute it's not." "And you came straight up from the river," said Gwyn, "didn't you? Work it out, man. We both felt something, and it must have been near enough at the same time. What was it?" "A thump," said Roger. "A kind of scream. Very quick, and a whistling in the air. That's all. And I got a shock from the plates," said Gwyn. "And nothing's been the same since. Where's Alison? Can't to tell her mother about yours." "There's something to show you," said Gwyn. "In the billiard room." They found Alison rattling the door handle. "Why have you locked it?" she said. "I want the plates." Gwyn unlocked the door and they went inside. "Gwyn, you've broken them." "Not me, lady. Have you seen what's behind you?" "Holy cow," said Roger. She was tall. Her long hair fell to her waist, framing in gold her pale and lovely face. Her eyes were blue. She wore a loose gown of white cambric, embroidered with living green stems of broom and meadowsweet, and a wreath of green oak leaves in her hair. "Gave me quite a turn, she did," said Gwyn. "There was just her eyes showing at first, but that pebble dash soon came off." "She's so beautiful," said Alison. "Who'd want to cover her up?" "16th century, if it's a day," said Roger. The woman was painted life-size in oils on wooden panelling. She stood against a background of clover heads based in rows. "What a find," said Roger. "It'll fetch thousands." "Not so fast," said Gwyn. "My mum would take an axe to it. You've not asked me how I found it." "How did you, then?" said Alison. "It was your plates. I was coming back in here when I heard them smash. They'd been chucked against the pebble dash, and a piece fell off." "Why should this make your mother wreck it?" said Alison. "My mum's scared stiff about something. She's grim at the best of times, but not this bad. It's the plates, isn't it, Alison?" "How should I know?" "Hugh said, 'Mind how you're looking at her. And now in the yard, she's coming.'" "What does that mean?" said Roger. "You can't tell," said Gwyn. "But someone cared enough about the painting and the plates to lug a dinner service into the roof and to pebble dash this wall. You don't go to all that trouble for nothing. Somebody wanted them hidden, and now they're not hidden. They're loose." "It might not have been the same person, and there's no harm," said Alison. "Not if we find something as wonderful as this." "Have you looked close? Marvellous detail, isn't it?" said Gwyn. "Have you looked at them clover heads, boyo?" "Great stuff. Like heraldry," said Roger. He went right up to the panelling. "And yet you could pick them." Roger stepped back. "Oh, no," he said. The heads were formed of curved white petals bunched together, each painted separately, fine and sharp. But the petals were not petals. They were claws. "Someone had a nasty mind," said Roger. "Or maybe that's the way it was when they painted it," said Gwyn. "Nasty." "You can't have flowers made of claws," said Roger. "Why not? You can have owls made of flowers, can't you?" said Gwyn. "Let's bring the plates down. I want to see them close too, and with the pattern on. Leave this pebble dash, I'll clear it up later. And don't say anything about this wall until we've had a think." They arranged that Gwyn and Roger should take the plates out of the loft and lower them from the bedroom window in a linen basket to Alison, who would be waiting with a barrow. "I'm getting cold feet over this," said Roger. "Shouldn't we leave it as it is and nail the loft up?" "There's something in this valley," said Gwyn. "That clover, them plates. It's owls and flowers, and it's dangerous." "So nail the loft up," said Roger. "If you'd seen Ally last night, you wouldn't be keen." "That's why I'm shifting the plates," said Gwyn. "Get them away from her first, and then we can think. I've not had a proper look at them paper models she makes. Does she really keep losing them?" "I think so," said Roger. "She's quite het up about it." "So I've noticed," said Gwyn. "We must disconnect her. Batteries can't work without wires." Gwyn went up into the loft and handed the dinner service to Roger, who put it in the linen basket and lowered it on a rope to Alison. Then Gwyn measured the hatch and came down. "You know, I think we're being a bit overwrought about all this," said Roger. "When you see them, they're just plates. And perhaps it was just mice." "Mice?" said Gwyn. "I'd forgotten. I said a cage trap." He climbed up the ladder and opened the hatch. "You've seen a cage trap, haven't you?" said Gwyn. "You know how it works. A one-way door. What's in it can't get out, right?" "Yes," said Roger. "Have you caught anything?" "I think I've caught a mouse," said Gwyn. Gwyn came down the ladder. He held out the cage. Inside was a hard-packed ball of bones and fur. "Owls aren't fussy," he said. "They just swallow straight off, and what they don't want they cough up later. That's an owl's pellet. But I think it was mouse." They had not heard Nancy come up the stairs. She was in the bedroom doorway. "It's taken you long enough to measure that door, isn't it, boy?" she said. "Is that all you're doing?" "I finished, ma'am," said Gwyn. "I'm going down the shop." "'Bout time," said Nancy. "I'm wanting flour for tea scones. Be sharp." "Can I have my money now?" said Gwyn. "You has pocket money Saturday," said Nancy. "There's nothing as can't wait. Saturday, boy." "But, ma'am, down the shop with you and less cheek." "I'm not cheeking you." "You are now," said Nancy. Gwyn went downstairs and into the kitchen. Roger followed. Gwyn opened a cupboard and took his mother's purse from behind a cocoa tin. "You're not going to nick it, are you?" said Roger. "No," said Gwyn. "Do you have pocket money every week?" said Roger. "Yes. Though if that's how you're fixed, I suppose it's okay to take some early. You're not pinching it, just anticipating." "Not even that," said Gwyn. "I'm giving." He opened the purse and dropped the ball of mouse inside. "A poor thing, but mine own." Then he closed the purse and put it back in the cupboard. Gwyn walked so fast down the drive that Roger had to run after him. His face was white, and he did not speak. "Should you have done that? It might give her heart failure," said Roger. "After all, she is your mother." "After all," said Gwyn, "she is." "What did you want your money for?" 10 lousy fags." "Oh, 10 stinking fags." "Look," said Roger, "if that's all it is, I can lend you." "No, thanks." "You needn't give it me back. I get plenty." "Congratulations." "What's up with you?" "Nothing." The shop was in the front room of a cottage half a mile down the valley. Mrs. Richards, the shopkeeper, was talking to Mrs. Lewis-Jones in Welsh. "I've been expecting it, Mrs. Lewis-Jones, I've been expecting it. There was never a summer like it this week, and then Gareth Pugh's black sow ran wild on the mountain, and they can't bring her down. Grandad used to say the beasts always know first." "They do," said Mrs. Lewis-Jones. "They're very excitable. The sheep are right up on the top there. Mr. Lewis-Jones is out all hours mending fences as far as the Ravenstone." "That's a long way," said Mrs. Richards. "Do think we shall see it in our time, Mrs. Richards. Mr. Hugh came to tell us last night. He says she's coming, and it's owls." "The poor things," said Mrs. Richards. She cut a lump of butter from a block on the windowsill.
"Yes, Mr. Hugh says the girl has made it owls." "There's no escaping, is there?" said Mrs. Richards. "Aberystwyth isn't far enough." "You've said a true word there, Mrs. Richards. I'll have a packet of soap flakes."
"Excuse me," said Roger. "If you've a lot of shopping, I wonder if we could possibly have some flour. We're in rather a hurry."
"Certainly,"
said Mrs. Lewis-Jones. £6 of flour for the house, please, Mrs. Richards, said Gwyn. "Right-o, boy." Mrs. Richards dipped a scoop into one of the dustbins. "She's coming, then?"
"She's coming," said Mrs. Lewis-Jones. "The poor lady."
"If it takes that long to ask for £1/2 of rancid butter and a packet of Daz, I'm glad I don't speak Welsh," said Roger when they were outside. "I thought we were going to be there all day." "They were talking," said Gwyn. "And how?" said Roger. "Women. Hey, I didn't see old Allie when we came out, did you?" "No." "I hope she managed those plates without being nabbed. Queer do about the trap, wasn't it? I wonder what made her put that grisly mouse in. I'd have thought she was too squeamish even for a laugh." "No laugh," said Gwyn, "and she didn't. It was still warm." "You're joking," said Roger. "I'd like to see the owl that could take a mouse out of a trap, eat it, and spit the pips back in." They walked under the shadow of the Bryn and along the drive. Alison was sitting in a deck chair on the lawn reading a book. "Hi, Allie," said Roger. "Did you manage to stash the plates okay?" Alison's eyes were hidden behind the black discs of her sunglasses. "What plates?" she said. "Oh, play the other side, Allie," said Roger. "What are you talking about?" said Alison, and went back to her book. "Where's them plates?" said Gwyn. "What plates?" said Alison without looking from the page. "Where have you put them plates, you stupid nit?" "Don't talk to me like that. You'll be sorry." "And who'll make me? You jumped-up snob, you and who else? We got to have them plates, they're loaded." Gwyn kicked the book from Alison's hands. It landed yards away, splayed on the grass. No one moved. There was silence. Then, "You shouldn't have done that," Alison said. "You shouldn't have done that." Her knuckles were white on the edge of the deck chair. Her neck was thrust forward. "You shouldn't have done that." Gwyn could see himself reflected in her sunglasses, and at the corner of the lens something fluttered like a wounded bird. It was the book. It came for him through the air. Its pages rattled and disintegrated, but still came for him. Gwyn dropped the flour bags and protected his face as the book swarmed at him. "No!" he shouted. Gravel from the drive stung his hands and ears. "Stop!" Gwyn ran. He blundered across to the wood. Twigs and leaves and pebbles and dead branches from the trees spun at him. A flour bag hit him, but he ran down towards the river to the boundary fence where he hung, sobbing against the wire. On the other side of the fence were the river and the mountain. He was over his shoes in the marsh. The wood lay still. The air throbbed with insects, and meadowsweet grew in a mist of flowers. "Bye," said Gwyn. "There's axiomatic." He walked uphill, out of the marsh, and stopped at the splash of flour. From here there was a trail of litter towards the house, fragments of the book. Not only had the leaves disintegrated, but the paper itself was in shreds. He tried to read one of the scraps. It made no sense, but he recognized the print. "Dicky Nignog," cried Gwyn. "Dicky flamin' Nignog." He snatched another piece off the ground. It was the same print from the same book. "Dicky Nignog," he groaned. But then a word caught his eye, and Gwyn read, "And enchantment to conjure a wife for him out of flowers, and he then a man in stature, and the handsomest youth that mortal ever saw. And then they took the flowers of the oak, and the flowers of the broom, and the flowers of the meadowsweet, and from those they called forth the very fairest and best endowed maiden that mortal ever saw." "Land of my crumbling fathers," said Gwyn. He followed the trail back through the wood, collecting the pieces, and at last he fitted two together. "Go in the form of a bird. and because of the dishonour thou hast done to Blodeuwedd, thou be for ever called Blodeuwedd. Blodeuwedd is owl in the language of this present day. When Gwyn reached the house, Alison and Roger were tidying the lawn. "Have you the binding off that book?" said Gwyn. "It's by the deck chair," said Alison. Gwyn opened the cover. "Ex libris St. J. Williams, Llanginog," he said. "Dickie Nignog, our English master at Aber. He's a raving book fetishist. It nearly killed him to lend me this, but he said I had to read it. He'll blow his top." "I'm sorry," said Alison. "Looks like a wedding, doesn't it?" said Gwyn. "Confetti by courtesy of St. J. Williams, Esquire, B.A. "Oh, Gwyn, I'm sorry." "What was it like? You read it, did you?" "Bits. They were short stories. Wizards and blood all over the place." "Don't knock our national heritage, girlie. Them old tales is all we got." "What's the name of that stone again?" Roger called. "Down by the river?" "The Stone of Gronw," said Gwyn. "Is this the same?" said Roger. He was holding another scrap of paper. "To Clue. Lord, said he, since it was through a woman's wiles I did to thee that which I did, I beg thee in God's name, a stone I see on the river bank, let me set that between me and the blow. Faith, said Clue, I will not refuse thee that. And then Gronw took the stone and set it between him and the blow. And then Clue took aim at him with the spear, and it pierced through the stone and through him too, so that his back was broken." "I read that," said Alison. "What's it about? What happened?" said Gwyn. "There was this wizard," said Alison, "and he made a woman out of flowers, and she married this Clue Claw somebody." "Blodeuwedd," said Gwyn. "Yes. Well then, she fell in love with a man called Gronw Pebber, and he decided to kill Clue." "Go on," said Gwyn. "This is a complicated bit, all magic," said Alison. "But Gronw threw a spear from a hill when Clue was standing by a river and killed him. But Clue wasn't really dead. He turned into an eagle, and the wizard found him and turned him back again. The wizard was his father or uncle. I'm not sure. Then Clue and Gronw changed places. Clue threw the spear this time, and Gronw was killed. Well, that's the end of the story. There's a stone by the river here called the Stone of Gronw. There's a hole in it," said Gwyn. "What happened to the wife?" "Oh, yes," said Alison. "The wizard said he wouldn't kill her. He'd do worse than that. So he turned her into an owl."
"It's the best I could manage," said Clive. "The chemist said he only stocked the normal tourist stuff. Sorry if it's a washout."
"No, it should be okay. These fast films don't enlarge as well as the one I wanted. They're a bit grainy, that's all."
"Are they now?"
said Clive. "I'll go down to the river while there's light."
"Is old Ally around?" said Clive. "I bought her a token of my esteem while we were out."
Clive took a small box from his pocket and opened it. Inside were limpet shells of different sizes glued together, painted and varnished, to make an owl.
"Thought it might amuse her," he said. "She was cutting out some of these fellows last night, you know. Look, there's some of the lingo on the back. 'Greetings from the land of song,' it says. Will she like it?"
"She's mad for owls, anyway," said Roger. He collected his tripod, camera, and exposure meter, and went along the front drive. The drive curved past the stable yard, and a gate in the wall led to the back of the stables, a dank place under the trees, where Hugh Half-Bacon chopped firewood. Gwyn was trying to work himself towards the back of the pile of wood. Roger leaned on the gate. "Having fun?" he said. "She's put them somewhere," said Gwyn. "She's hidden them." Roger climbed over to join Gwyn. "There's a whole dinner service, and that takes up space. Have you tried above the stables?" There were 3 rooms over the stables, and because the stables were set into the hill, these upper rooms had entrances at ground level.
"I've looked in the table tennis room," said Gwyn. "Hugh lives next door, and he has the only key, and the other's padlocked. None of the house keys fit. I've tried." Roger put his ear to the door. He beckoned to Gwyn. They both listened. "There's someone moving about inside," Roger whispered. "Allie?" he called. "Allie?" "Is that you, Alison?" said Gwyn. There was no answer. "What did you hear?" said Roger. "Swishing," said Gwyn. "No footsteps." "Allie?" Roger called. "Allie, don't muck about." Roger tried to look through the window. "I can't see much," he said. "The glass is all cobwebs inside. There's something square, not very big, a crate, I think, and something black in a corner. That's all. Nobody inside." "It could be dead leaves in a draught," said Gwyn. "There's plenty by the door." "Where have you tried?" said Roger. "All over the house, inside and out." "I'm going to use up my film by that stone," said Roger. "Coming?" "What about Alison?" "She's bound to be back for dinner in half an hour," said Roger. "And if she's not around the house, we may find her by the river." "But you don't realize," said Gwyn. "I do," said Roger. "What do you think it is?" said Gwyn. "I don't know," said Roger. "I do know I wasn't imagining the row in her bedroom last night." "And this afternoon?" said Gwyn. "On the lawn?" "Freak squall?" said Roger. "Oh, man!" "All right." "And the plates going blank?" "The glaze." "And smashing? And the billiard room, and the pellet in the trap, and the owls and flowers, and the Mabinogion?" "The what-ion?" said Roger. "That book," said Gwyn. "It's called a Mabinogion." "What is it?" said Roger. "Welsh myths." "Sort of," said Gwyn. "I wish I'd taken more notice." "This is the stone," said Roger, "and the hole goes right through it." "And the meadowsweet grew all around," said Gwyn. "And the meadowsweet grew all around." "You say the hole frames the trees on the bryn?" "By, it does too." "How is it you knew what the stone was, if you've not seen it before?" said Roger. "I know every cow-clap in this valley," said Gwyn. "I know where to look for sheep after a snowstorm. I know how to find the slates that point the road over the mountain if you're caught in a mist. I know where the foxes go when they're hunted. I even know what Mrs. Harvey knows. And I came here for the first time last week. Makes you laugh, doesn't it? My mum hates the place, but she can't get rid of it, see? It feels like every night of my life's been spent listening to Mum in that back street in Aber, her going on and on about the valley. She started in the kitchen here when she was 12. There was a full staff in them days, not just Hugh trying to keep the weeds down." Gwyn sat on the stone. "You're right," he said. "It's a long way for a spear. But you heard it, didn't you? And then he screamed." "You think it's haunted, then?" "Ghosts don't eat mice," said Gwyn. "Whatever chewed that mouse could chew me or you. If there's any more of it, I'm off," said Roger. "How will you manage?" said Gwyn. "Dad's steerable when you know how." "And the new Mrs. Bradley?" said Gwyn. "A kind of family honeymoon, is it?" "Mind your own business," said Roger. He spiked the tripod into the earth and set up the camera. "What happened to your real mum?" said Gwyn. "I told you to mind your own business." "She around, then?" Roger looked over the camera at Gwyn. "I'll fill you in," he said. "If you open your big mouth once more, I'll fill you in." "Okay," said Gwyn. Roger adjusted the lens. "Not haunted," said Gwyn, after a while. "More like still happening." "A 10th at F16, said Roger. "I'll go up and down either side of that." "What did you say?" "Gwydion. One of the 3 golden shoemakers of the Isle of Britain. That's him." "What are you blathering at?" said Roger. "He was the wizard who made the wife out of flowers for Llywelyn Goffus. He's coming back to me. Gwydion made Blodeuwedd for Llw, and she fell in love with Gronw Pebber." "That's what Alison said." "And Gronw killed Llw here on this very spot. Then Llw killed Gronw, and Blodeuwedd was turned into an owl." "The problem is to line the camera up with this hole so that you can see the trees," said Roger. "I want to use the rock texture as a frame for the trees in the distance." "Think of it, man," said Gwyn. "A woman made of flowers and then changed into an owl. The plates, man. It's all there if we could see it." He jumped down and ran towards the house. "Where are you off to?" shouted Roger. "Hugh the Flitch. Mind how you're looking at her. He knows. The flamer." Roger went back to his camera. The light was fading quickly, and he decided to take the last frames of film on long exposures. He used the delayed setting for these. When he pressed the button, the camera whirred for several seconds, and then the shutter clicked. Whir and click, whir and click, and the shadows seemed to come out of the river. "Taking photos, are you?" Roger yelped with fright. Hugh Half-Bacon was standing behind him. "What do you think you're doing, creeping up on me like that?" "I was bringing sticks," said Hugh. "For the fire, yes." "Then why don't you fetch them from the wood?" said Roger. "It's choked with dead timber." "We don't go there," said Hugh. "You taking photo of the stone of Garner, are you?" "No," said Roger. "The Albert Memorial." "That's clever," said Hugh. Whir, click. "Gwyn's looking for you," said Roger. Hugh began to suck at an unlit pipe, turning the charred bowl. "It is old stone," he said. "The stone of Garner." "I said Gwyn's looking for you." "Not a bad man," said Hugh. "He's not all to blame. She is setting her cap at him, the other man's wife." "The one who was supposed to be made of flowers?" said Roger. "Yes," said Hugh. "Blodeuwedd, you know her? You have Raven's knowledge? Yes, she is setting her cap at him, the fine gentleman. Garner Pebber, Lord of Penchlin." "Don't you people round here talk about anything else?" said Roger. "You'd think it was the only thing that's ever happened in this valley." "That is right," said Hugh. "Hugh is a hard lord. He is killing Garner without anger, without love, without mercy. He is hurt too much by the woman and the spear. Yet what is there left when it is done? His pride. No wife, no friend." Roger stared at Hugh. "Now you mention it," he said, "I have been thinking. That bloke Garner was the only one with any real guts at the end." "But none of them is all to blame," said Hugh. "It is only together they are destroying each other." "That blood woman was pretty poor," said Roger, "however you look at it." "No," said Hugh. "She was made for her lord. Nobody is asking her if she wants him. It is bitter twisting to be shut up with a person you're not liking very much. I think she is often longing for the time when she was flowers on the mountain, and it is making her cruel, as the rose is growing thorns." "Boy, you're really screwed up about this, aren't you?" said Roger. "There's a world outside this valley, you know." "I've been outside the valley," said Hugh, "once. That's why I'm Hugh the Flitch." "I don't see the connection," said Roger. "We are very short of meat in the valley all time," said Hugh, "and there is a man in the next valley. He has some pigs, but he's not letting anyone have them. I go to him and I ask him to let me take the pigs in exchange for what I will give him." "Did he agree?" said Roger. "Yes." "And you took the pigs, and that's how you got your nickname?" "Yes." Hugh laughed. "I am tricking him lovely." "What did you give him for the pigs?" 12 fine horses," said Hugh, "with gold saddles and gold bridles, and 12 champion greyhounds with gold collars and gold leashes." Hugh staggered with his laughter and grabbed Roger's arm for support. "You're mad," said Roger. "You're mad. You're really mad." "No, no," said Hugh. He wiped his eyes. "I am tricking him, you see, them greyhounds and the horses and the trappings and all. I was making them out of toadstools." Towards the end of dinner, Gwyn stacked the plates on the hatch and then went to light the fire in the sitting room. Then he lit the lamps. Roger and his father came through from the dining room and settled themselves in easy chairs. Gwyn put the hanging lamp on the chimney. Then he rearranged the logs in the basket and brushed the hearth. Then he put more wood on the fire and rearranged the logs. "I think we're suited now," said Clive. "Thanks a lot. I'd better bring you some logs." "We'll manage," said Clive. Toddle along now. Oh, yes. Good night, Gwyn. Good night, Mr. Bradley. One small point out, son. If you've anything you want to tell my daughter, let's all hear it, shall we? Let's have the Brussels sprouts served straight, without noughts inside them, eh? Gwyn stood in the dark at the foot of the stairs, between the dining room and the sitting room. "Had any luck with the snaps?" he heard Clive say through the open door. "I don't know," said Roger. "I'll see tomorrow when I develop them. If they come out, it'll be no thanks to that half-bacon moron. He was trying to louse it up the whole time. Honest, Dad, you'll have to do something about him." "He's harmless," said Clive. "Is he, though?" said Roger. "He's as strong as an ox, and he's a real nutter." "Yes, but he's been here all his life. He knows the ropes, and where would we find anyone for the job? Margaret wouldn't have much of a holiday if we had to go scrounging for a new man." "Of course," said Roger. "I was forgetting Margaret." Alison came down the stairs. Gwyn waved towards the dining room. Alison hesitated. Clive and Roger were still talking. She looked at Gwyn, and then Gwyn watched her pass by him into the sitting room and watched her close the door. "Hello, old stick," said Clive. "Here's a little nonsense I picked up in town today. Thought it might amuse a lady." "Oh, Clive, how sweet," said Alison. She took the box. "You are a darling." Gwyn ran through the dining room to the kitchen and stopped when he came up against the sink. He stood still. Then he turned the taps on and began, slowly, methodically, to wash up. Then he dried everything and put it away, and it was only when he went to hang the cloth to dry that he noticed his mother by the stove. She sat on a kitchen chair, gazing at the closed fire door. One hand gripped the towel rail. "Hello, ma'am," said Gwyn. "Didn't see you there. Shall I light another lamp?" "No, boy," said Nancy. "Leave it." "Not like our own fire at Aber," said Gwyn. "Is it, ma'am?" "I should never have come," said Nancy. "I shouldn't have come. It's not right. Never go back, boy. Never go back." "What's the matter, ma'am? Got a bad head?" said Gwyn. "If there was justice in heaven," said Nancy. "What's wrong, ma'am?" "I shouldn't have come." "Then why did we?" said Gwyn. "It's good money, boy," said Nancy. "But I should never have listened to her soft soap." "Who had our address?" said Gwyn. "That idiot outside." "Hugh? Why should he have it?" Nancy's hand worked on the rail. "Ma'am," said Gwyn. "Listen, ma'am, we got to talk about it." "There isn't nothing to talk about." "Oh, yes, there is. Listen, ma'am. Just once. Please." Nancy was silent. "You told me so much about the valley," said Gwyn. "It was like coming home. All my life I've known this place better than Aber. Ma'am, I even know who people are when I see them. You describe them that good. So why didn't I know about Hugh Half-Bacon?" "He don't count," said Nancy. "Yes, he does," said Gwyn. "People in the valley don't call him a fool. He's important." "Who you been listening to?" said Nancy. "You been talking behind my back, have you?" "No, ma'am," said Gwyn. "You on their side, are you?" said Nancy. "Giving my character?" "Ma'am, I got to know about Hugh and them plates." "I'm telling you, boy," said Nancy. Her voice was slow. "If you says another word to that old fool, or if you says another word about it to me or anyone else, I walk out of this house and you leave that school. No more for you. You start behind the counter at the co-op." "You can't do that," said Gwyn. "I'm telling you, boy, you can't." Nancy went to the kitchen dresser and fumbled in one of the cupboards. "I'm telling you, boy. Where's the aspirin?" she said. "I got one of my heads." "I have got one of my heads," said Gwyn. "It's uncouth to omit the auxiliary verb. And if you want aspirin, have you tried your purse?" Gwyn stood on the high terracing of the garden above the back of the house overlooking the cloakroom. He stood against a tree by the hedge where the road came nearest the house as it curled round the bryn. "You're going to come out of that door, and the only way to nab you is to keep watching." At first Gwyn had thought it would be impossible. But he had set himself against the trunk, and gradually the night separated into cloud and mountain and trees, river and wind and sound in leaves and grass. The moon shone. Once he was alarmed by the quick drumming of hoofs, but the next moment a motorcycle swept along the road. Its headlamp spun shadows in his face. Lights moved inside the house as the family went to bed. 2 lights came to rest, one room above the other, Roger and Alison. Alison's window darkened first. He saw the curtains part, and a smudge of face appeared. She was sitting on the window ledge, watching the reflection of Roger's light on the garden, and when he blew the lamp out, Alison left the window. It was nearly an hour, as far as he could tell, before he saw Alison's torch flash in the bedroom. When she unlocked the cloakroom door, Gwyn was above her, ready. She went along the back of the house and past the billiard room. Gwyn stayed well up by the road. She could be making for the back drive or the wood. Below him the wood stretched through marshland to the river, and in front was the drive. Gwyn began to watch and listen again. Far away among the trees, deep in the marsh, he saw a light. Gwyn made towards the light. Alison had stopped, and Gwyn approached very slowly. He was within a few yards of her when the light was switched off. Now what? She can't see any better than me, so she'll still be there, dead ahead. The light came on again, but far over to the right. What's she playing at? It was moving at walking pace, flickering, as though the battery was giving out. Gwyn followed. How she got there so fast? I didn't hear her. He listened. The river was at the back of every sound. She must have flew. He followed the light. Alison began to zigzag. What's she up to? And the light went out again. Not twice you don't, girlie. Gwyn bent low to skyline Alison. She was somewhere near the edge of the wood, and the trees were black against the silver mountain. Now then. But the light came on even farther away, and well inside the wood. The light still flickered. Weak connection, thought Gwyn. But how are you moving so fast? Still crouching, he ran for the cover of a tree, and stood up against it. He was beginning to enjoy the game. Your move, girlie? Gwyn's head jerked back against the tree. The light was still there, but another had appeared, 100 feet away to the left. 2 of them, and the first light now came mincing towards him. Gwyn swirled round the trunk. There was a third pale fire behind him. He saw that they were not torches, and never had been. They were flames. They had trapped him. If I shout, no one will hear. The flames walked, 2 at a distance, casual, backwards and forwards, marking him off from the world outside the wood, while the first flame came on. This is where Hugh's old fellow went mad. Get me out of here! Get me out of here! The flame grew tall and wavered like laughter. How do I stop from going mad? He wasn't hurt, was he? He couldn't stand it. Inside, in his head. Think, man, you're not a peasant. Do something. Use your loaf. The acceleration of a free-falling body is 32 feet per second per second, per second per second. It's only fire, that's all. But the flame was as tall as he was, and stood before him. Matter consists of 3 classes of substance. An element, a compound, and a mixture. Describe an experiment. Ma'am. Grind together. 10 grams of fused sodium acetate and 15 grams of soda lime. Place some of the mixture in the test tube, ma'am, and heat strongly. Then CH3CO2Na plus NaOH equals Na2CO3 plus CH4. It does! The other flames danced. Gwyn stopped. It was very quiet in the wood. Gwyn stared at the flame. He let go of the tree and took a slow step forward towards the blue fire. And another step. CH4, he said. CH4. 1 atom of carbon and 4 atoms of hydrogen. That's methane. Methane. Gwyn slashed through the mud and stamped at the nearest tongue. It disappeared. Methane. Stamp. Methane. Splash. Marsh gas. Gwyn trampled the delicate veils, laughing. CH, piddlin' 4. He fell against a dead sapling which snapped. The sharp noise brought him up. "Oh, Crimond," he said. "Alison. That's done it, that has. Thought yourself clever, didn't you? Waiting so patient and all. And you have to go and chuck it away when it's handed you on a plate. Ha! Plate. 2 penn'orth of methane, and you scream the house down. You'll be lucky if you get within a mile of them plates now. And won't it make a nice little story for dear little stepbrother?" Gwyn headed out of the swamp. He was so angry with himself that he took no notice of the marsh gas, nor of the wood, nor of the moonlight, nor of the noise he made. Oaf! Peasant! Welsh git! Achoo! The sneeze was near him. He listened, but he heard nothing to give him a direction. Gwyn scanned the wood. To his right the ground was steep and very black. In front of him a raised causeway stretched across a pool to a gate in the boundary fence. He waited for a movement to give her away. "Got you." She was standing under a tree at the end of the causeway, near the gate. He looked and looked. She became clearer, standing half hidden by the dapple of leaves in the moonlight. He could see the line of her through the branches. "I'll sit you out this time, girlie. If you move, I'll see you. Wait till we're nice and quiet again, and you're sure nobody's after you. Then it'll be safe to carry on, and I'll be behind you, Miss Alison." Achoo! Gwyn's teeth clenched. Alison had sneezed next to him, where the wood was darkest. Gwyn made himself look. "Stone me," said Gwyn. An old hen hut on iron wheels sat rotting in the marsh, and from inside the hut came a faint noise of moving crockery. So who's by the fence? The figure was still there at the end of the causeway, waiting under the tree, head and shoulders, and arms, and the slim body, and then he saw, no less clearly, leaves and branches, thicket and moonlight, and no one waiting. Stone me. Gwyn shook his head. His eyes were heavy with strain. There was a window on the opposite side of the hut. Alison was huddled over her torch, cutting owls out of a roll of tracing paper. She worked quickly, discarding each owl as soon as it was finished, to begin the next. The ribbed stacks of plates surrounded her and reflected the torchlight. Gwyn drew back from the window. "Alison," he said quietly. "It's Gwyn." The light went out. "Alison, it's me, Gwyn. Don't be scared." There was no reply. "Alison!" He opened the door. The hut was a black hole, and he could see nothing. "Alison, don't act daft. I want to help you. Alison, I'm coming in. Shine your torch." He put his hand on the door frame. "Go. Away." There was a fluttering in the darkness like wings, but dry and hard. "Alison, I'm coming in. Go. Away." The warning, the menace of the sound, terrified him. The quick ruffling of the stacked plates. "Don't, Alison. You've got to stop." "Go. Away." The plates clashed. Gwyn dived. He hit Alison with his shoulder and pinned her arms to her sides. She fought, threshing, kicking, but Gwyn held her. The dinner service splintered under them. Gwyn held her until her strength was gone. Then he felt for the torch. "You all right, are you?" said Gwyn. "Yes. Sorry if I hurt, but I had to stop you making those owls." "I have to make them," said Alison. "I get all worked up, and I feel I'm going to burst, and if I can trace the pattern, it goes into that. Please, let me finish them, then I'll be all right." "How do you make things take off?" said Gwyn. "Like the book at me, and the plate at my mum." "Do I?" said Alison. "It's this feeling I'm going to burst. It's losing your temper and being frightened only more. My body gets tighter and tighter, and then it's as if my skin suddenly holes and it all shoots out." "Has it ever happened before you made the owls?" "No." "Then don't you see you have to stop?" "I can't, Gwyn. You don't know what it's like. I must finish them. I was on the last one. Please, Gwyn, then I can sleep. I'm dead beat." "You look it," said Gwyn. "Okay." Alison picked up the scissors and cut round the tracings she had made from the plate. "There," she said. "That's the whole dinner service." "Can I keep this owl?" said Gwyn. "Yes," said Alison. "Do what you want." Gwyn folded the owl into his pocket. "Now then, come on, back up the house." He put his hand on Alison's arm. She was trembling, and her teeth began to chatter. She clutched at his sleeve. "I'm frightened. Help me. It's awful. You don't know. Please, Gwyn, I'm frightened, Gwyn." "I'm here," said Gwyn. "What are you frightened of?" "Everything," said Alison. "It's as if nothing's safe any more. I don't know where I am. Yesterday, today, tomorrow, they don't mean anything. I feel they're here at the same time, waiting." "And that's what's frightening you?" "Not just that," said Alison. "All of me's confused the same way. I keep wanting to laugh and cry." "Sounds dead metaphysical to me," said Gwyn. "I knew you wouldn't understand, Gwyn. I'm frightened. I'm frightened of what's outside." "It's hysterics, man," said Gwyn. "Come up the house now and get some sleep." "Gwyn, no, I daren't. I'm safe here." "You can't spend your life in a hen hut, can you?" said Gwyn. "If you let yourself go, you'll land up paralytic. You have to get a grip. Think of cold kippers." "Oh, Gwyn!" Alison nearly laughed. "I mean it. It's a creepy old wood, so think of cold kippers. It's all in the mind." Gwyn took Alison's hand and pushed the door open with his back. He saw Alison stare past his shoulder. "Gwyn." "Cold kippers, remember?" "Gwyn, look." A column of light stood at the end of the causeway, under the tree by the gate in the boundary fence. The column was tall, and narrowed at its top and base, and ridges of flame hung like draped cloth. Alison began to moan. "It's okay," said Gwyn. "Alison, it's okay. It's what I was telling you." She pulled back towards the hut. "No," she said. "Look." "It's marsh gas," said Gwyn. "You find it in places like this, where plants rot underwater. It's harmless. It's only marsh gas." "It may be marsh gas," said Alison. "It doesn't matter what it is. Can't you see it's being used?" "All right, Alison. Back we go," said Gwyn. "It'll be daylight soon. We'll sit it out." They sat on the floor of the hut, and Alison hid her head in Gwyn's shoulder, and he talked to her until the sun cleared the mountain. Then he had to wake her. They stepped from the hut into rainbow dew, and walked together up to the house through the midsummer dawn. Hugh Half-Bacon was scratching the gravel of the drive with a rake. He pushed his cap back on his head when Gwyn and Alison appeared. "She's come?" he said. Gwyn went with Alison as far as the cloakroom door. Hugh Half-Bacon was leaning on the rake when Gwyn came back. "Are you on piecework?" said Gwyn. "Or is raking the drive your answer to the problem of leisure?" "There's a lot to be done," said Hugh. "So you start at 4 o'clock every morning?" "Only in summer," said Hugh. "Don't put that tourist trade look on for me," said Gwyn. "Keep the simple peasant for the other mugs, Mr. Hugh, not me." Hugh said nothing. Gwyn noticed that his arms were the same thickness from shoulder to wrist. "Alison's finished tracing the owls on that dinner service. She makes them into paper models." Gwyn felt in his pocket, frowned, then turned his pocket inside out. "I had one of them," he said. "Never mind. She makes these owls. Then soon after it seems the pattern vanishes off the plates. First question, Mr. Hugh." "She wants to be flowers," said Hugh. "But you make her owls. Why do we destroy ourselves?" "I'm asking the questions," said Gwyn. "What have those plates to do with Blodeuwedd?" "She is a lady," said Hugh, "and she has come." "What does that mean?" "I don't know." "What's wrong with the plates?" said Gwyn. "My grandfather made them." "So?" "He went mad." "Why did he go mad?" said Gwyn. "Down in the wood," said Hugh. I said why, not where. Where in the wood, Mr. Hugh? There's a causeway over the swamp to a gate in the fence on the river bank, said Hugh. He saw the lady made of flowers, but he was not strong enough to keep her, and she changed into... He would never say what happened. Down in the wood, we don't go there. Gwyn had lost his colour. By the gate, he said, at the end of the causeway, under a tree, close to the hen hut. How do you know that? Said Hugh. How do you know? We don't go there. His arms swung forward and held Gwyn. I told you we don't go there. Who's we? You're not my boss. I'll go where I like, said Gwyn. Lay off, you're hurting. We are not free, said Hugh. We have tried too many times to be free. No lord is free. My grandfather tried, my uncle tried, and I have tried to end it, but it has no end. Lay off. Gwyn twisted out of Hugh's grip. She wants to be flowers, but you make her owls. You must not complain then if she goes hunting. Talk sense, man, cried Gwyn. Please, I gotta know. You do know, said Hugh. Chloe, Blodeuwedd, and Gronw Pebber. They are the three who suffer every time, for in them the power of this valley is contained, and through them the power is loosed. What's this power? Said Gwyn. Hugh did not answer. Is the power in the plates? Some of it, said Hugh. For a while, and a while. And that picture in the billiard room, you know, don't you? Oh, yes, said Hugh. My uncle painted that. But it's centuries old, man. Yes, my uncle painted that. But he can't have done. And he found peace, too, that way before he died. You see, grandfather and uncle were great men, and they thought they could tame her, and the sorrow of this valley. But they made her owls, and she went hunting. They rid themselves at last by locking her in plate and wall, and then they sought a quiet grave. What's it to do with you or your grandfather or your uncle? Said Gwyn. We have the blood, said Hugh, and we must bear it. A lord must look to his people, and they must not suffer for his wrong. When I took the powers of the oak and the broom and the meadow sweet and made them woman, that was a great wrong, to give those powers a thinking mind. You didn't do that, said Gwyn. You're mixed up. It's a story, Hugh, in books about the old days long ago, and it was a man called Gwydion who made Blodeuwedd, not you. You didn't make anybody out of flowers, and your uncle didn't paint that picture for a start. Hugh, they think you're off your head, and Roger's trying to have you sacked. I've heard them. They'll not do anything, said Hugh. They'll give you the push all right if it suits them, said Gwyn. Don't play up so. If this lot here think you're taking them for a ride, you'll be out on your neck. You don't own the place, man. Don't I? Said Hugh. Oh, their name is on the books of the law. But I own the ground, the mountain, the valley. I own the song of the cuckoo, the brambles, the berries. The dark cave is mine. You're looking a bit peaky this morning, said Clive. Sure you're okay? I'm fine, thanks, said Alison. I think I'll go for a breath of fresh air. That's the stuff, said Clive. Where's Roger? Said Alison. He's down in the cellar with his films developing, I think. Anyway, he said not to disturb him. Never mind, said Alison. I shan't be long. Remember what Margaret said, won't you? Yes, Clive. I mean, she has your best interests at heart. Yes, Clive. We want you to be happy, that's all. You're very sweet, Clive, said Alison. See you at lunch. Cheers, said Clive. Alison walked along the river path below the terrace. The path went into the marsh at the hen hut. Gwyn was sitting on a stump by the path. Hello, said Alison. Hello. Alison climbed onto a rock. Gwyn pointed through the trees. See that dark line going up the mountain? He said. That's the old peat road. Every summer the people from the valley went up the top to cut peat. 4 days it took them. How did they carry it down? Said Alison. Horses, said Gwyn. "But it's so steep." "Do you use sledges? And see that scar above the stream there? That was the quarry for building the house."
"I wish I was like you," said Alison. "You belong here."
"Me? This is the first time I've seen the place."
"That's it," said Alison. "You came a week ago and you know everything as if you'd always lived here. While I've been spending holidays at the house all my life, and yet I don't belong."
"It's your house," said Gwyn.
"That doesn't count for much at the moment."
"How long has your family owned the place?"
"I've no idea. Daddy inherited from a cousin who was killed before I was born. His name was Bertram."
"If you really put your foot down, would you have your own way?"
"Why? What's the matter?"
"I'm worried about Hugh," said Gwyn.
"You won't sack him, will you?" "They're talking about it," said Alison. "Clive's bothered about him being dangerous." "Is he?"
Gwyn shook his head. "I don't know. There's too much that's screwy with him, and too much of it is sense. He talks so elliptical. Even in Welsh, you just can't make him out. But I've been thinking, and what he says could be true. Come and look in the hen hut."
"I'd rather not," said Alison.
"I've been thinking too. It won't take a moment," said Gwyn. He opened the door. "There. One dinner service. Plain white, smashed."
"No, Gwyn. I'm scared again, and the tight feeling inside."
"Don't worry. The pattern's gone and every piece is bust. You can tell yourself we broke it when we were scrapping last night, if you like. I don't know how you cope with the pattern. And where are the owls you made?"
"Gwyn, don't go on at me, please. Not you. You're the only one I can talk to."
"You wouldn't think it," said Gwyn. "What about when I needed to talk to you? The way you swept past and went in.
"Oh, Clive, how sweet."
And me out there. How do you think that felt?"
"I had to," said Alison. "Mummy was coming down any second, and we'd had the most awful row about that message you put in the sprouts. Mummy was livid. She said some hateful things. I didn't know she could be like that."
"I just want to talk to you," said Gwyn. "With you it all goes how I mean it."
Gwyn went back to the tree stump. "We must talk about these plates." "Why?" said Alison. "They're broken. I don't care 2 hoots." "Oh, 2 hoots!" Alison laughed, covering her face with her hands. 2 hoots!
"Steady," said Gwyn. "Come on, Alison, that's enough now. Come on, girl, I'm sorry." "Hello," said Roger. He was leaning against a tree. "I wondered where you were. I've some prints I want you to see." "In a minute," said Gwyn. "Ali," said Roger, "your mother's knocking around, don't you think? Remember." "What's he on about?" said Gwyn.
Alison looked at him. "Gwyn, don't come to the house with us. Gwyn, I tried, but Mummy said I wasn't to talk to you."
"It's quite an order, Miss Alison," said Gwyn. "And I'll use the tradesman's entrance in future." He walked briskly up through the wood towards the back drive.
"Gwyn, I daren't." "Of course, if I'd had the proper stuff, I could have blown it up as big as the wall," said Roger. "Still, there's enough to give you some idea, and perhaps you'll be able to tell what it is. A fresh eye, and all that." "Not now, Roger," said Alison. "The prints are on the dining-room table. They'll be a bit damp, so mind you don't flap them about." "Later, not now." "Didn't half give me a shock at first, I'll tell you," said Roger. "It's the last two, and that great hairy Welsh freak was watching. Gwyn was there when I took most of the others. Anyway, see for yourself. They're in here." But as soon as Roger opened the door, Alison ran past him and up the stairs. "Oi, Ally!" Her door banged. "Women," said Roger, and went into the dining-room. His photographs were piled on the windowsill in full sunlight. The top prints had rolled themselves into tubes. Nancy was laying the table. "Who's moved my prints?" said Roger. "They was on the table," said Nancy. "I know they were on the table. I put them there to finish drying. I've spent all morning on those prints." "They was in the way," said Nancy. "I got work to do, and dining-room table isn't the place for sticky paper when you has to polish it every day and sometimes twice." "In the way?" said Roger. "You've ruined my prints, that's all. In the way? Is it your job to decide what's in the way here?" "I wishes to see Mrs. Bradley," said Nancy. "Hello, hello, hello," said Clive, coming in through the cloakroom. "What's all the hoo-ha?" "I wants to speak to Mrs.," said Nancy, "and give in notice." "She went and ruined—" all right," said Clive. "Let's drop the temperature, shall we? Now then, old son, collect your tackle and scarper, eh? I'll help you sort it out in the parlour. But wait a tick. There's a good lad. I'll be right with you." Roger picked up the photographs and left the room. He went through to the parlour and unrolled the sheets on the floor. Then Clive came into the parlour. He was putting his wallet back in his pocket. "An expensive holiday, this," he said. "I was all morning with these prints," said Roger, "and she's messed them up. Easy does it. You not go far if you don't learn to bend with the wind, and Nancy's blowing a bit strong lately." Roger spread out the photographs, weighting them at the corners with ornaments. "Sorry I flew off the handle, Dad. It was the way she slung them about. Couldn't she see they were there on purpose?" "She wouldn't think," said Clive. "You mustn't expect the Nancys of this world to have too much savvy." "Gwyn seems pretty smart." "Ah, yes, well, that's the trouble. Brains aren't everything by a long chalk. You must have the background." "Is that why Margaret's gone so county with Alison?" "Tricky," said Clive. "Very, very tricky. You know? Now, what about these snaps of yours? Shall we put them on the billiard table? It's better than in here. Not come out too well, have they? What's this? A wet weekend in Brum?" "You tell me," said Roger. "I'll put them in order. Now here's the straightforward 7 shots of that stone by the river. In the first 3, Gwyn was sitting on the top of the stone. Right. Now here are enlargements of the middle part of each picture. You can see how I've made the whole frame the trees on the Bryn." "Yes, jolly good," said Clive. "Quite effective." Now in the last 2 pictures Gwyn wasn't there, but old Streaky Bacon had turned up. Here. "Jolly good, spot on again." "Are they?" said Roger. Clive knelt over the prints and looked closely at them, comparing the 2 sets. "Aha," he said. "Yes, there's something extra in the last 2. "What is it?" Clive put on his glasses. "No," he said. "No go. If you made it bigger we might see." "I have," said Roger. "Here's your wet weekend." The prints were coarse patterns of blobs and lines. "What's gone wrong?" said Clive. "It's the film in the paper," said Roger. "You can only blow the negative up so far, and then the grain of the film starts to show. I've tried to compromise. Here, I've taken it as far as possible and stopped just before the picture disintegrates. What do you make of it?" The trees in the picture were like burnt matchsticks, and between 2 of them was a cluster of grey and black beads. "I'd say this was someone on a horse, either lifting a pole up or waving his hand." "Have you seen any horses since we came here?" said Roger. "It could be a pony," said Clive. "Pony tricking's very popular nowadays." "Look at the next print," said Roger. "He's taken his hand down," said Clive. "But you can't see much of him, can you? Wait a minute. That pony's a bit round fore and aft. If I hadn't known about the other photo, I'd say it was a motorbike." "Up there?" "Just the place for a scramble. Was there anyone riding round?" No, Dad, that's the point. The pictures were all shot within 5 minutes, and I was watching the Bryn. How have these two turned out like this?
I haven't the faintest, unless Half-Bacon was putting a jinx on you.
Are you serious, Dad? Could he?
Could he what?
Put a jinx on me.
Now, steady, said Clive. We're not in the Middle Ages. You'll be roasting the chap at the stake next.
Roger and his father gathered up the prints and carried them to the billiard-room. The door was open, but they could not go in because a wheelbarrow was blocking the way. The wheelbarrow held broken pebble dash, and Gwyn was clearing the last of it from the floor with a brush and shovel. Roger and his father waited outside. Gwyn said nothing, but went on with his sweeping. "I'd forgotten," said Roger. "There's something to show you." They waited.
"We'll settle for that, old lad," said Clive. "Chop, chop."
"It was brushing up like," said Gwyn.
"You don't want this rubbish here, isn't it? Shift your barrow, will you, so we can get in?"
"That's right, Mr. Bradley," said Gwyn, and went on sweeping.
"The barrow, laddie," said Clive. "Smartish."
"Yes, sir," said Gwyn. "At once, sir." Gwyn pushed the barrow through the doorway and bumped it down the steps to the path at the back of the house. "Dad, come and see this." Roger put his photographs on the billiard table. "What do you think of our mural?"
"Oh, Dad!"
He was looking at a bare wooden panel.
"The vindictive beggar! He scraped it off."
Roger ran to the steps. Gwyn was wheeling the barrow.
"Hey, you!"
Gwyn stopped.
"What did you have to wreck that painting for, you Welsh oaf?"
"Master Roger," said Gwyn,
"there's asking for a poke in the gob you are. Indeed to goodness. Look you."
When she heard the shouting, Alison went to the window. Gwyn appeared wheeling a barrow towards the stables. Alison leaned her head against the glass. Some distance away, the long stone fish tank by the lawn sparkled where the inlet broke from the ferns, and she saw herself mirrored among halos that the sun made on the water. "I'm up here, and down there," thought Alison. "Which is me?" Gwyn came back from the stables. He sat on the edge of the tank, right next to the Alison in the water. "Now, am I here and you there, or are we together? If I'm the reflection here, then we'll be able to talk to each other. Hello, Gwyn." Gwyn reached out to touch her hair, and she was at once gold and whiteness over the water, and Alison was back in the window, and the metal frame was hurting her cheek. And Gwyn looked up. The gong sounded for lunch, and Alison hurried downstairs, while Gwyn went to drain the potatoes and put them in their dish on the serving hatch. "What you been up to?" said Nancy after the first course. "He says you're not to wait on at table today." "I offered to thump his son and heir a few minutes ago," said Gwyn. "Did you hit him?" "No. Daddy broke it up." "Pity," said Nancy, and carried the cheese board through to the dining room. Gwyn frowned after his mother. Pity? Then he cleared the dirty plates from the hatch and stacked them at the sink. His hands trembled at the idea. There was time, but he had to be quick and quiet. 5 boxes. 2 from each wouldn't be missed. He tried the sitting room first. 1 box. He opened it, and it was full. At least 100 cigarettes. He took 5. Gwyn went into the parlour. 3 from the second box. More. But there were no more boxes. 8 cigarettes were as bad as none. There was time for only 1 try. He stepped into the cloakroom and put his hand in the pocket of Clive's fishing jacket. His fingers gripped a flat metal box. Back in the kitchen, Gwyn put the 10 cigarettes in a drawer. He opened the kitchen door to the outside passage, took the lids off the dustbins, and began to turn the contents over. He came down from his bedroom a quarter of an hour later. Nancy sat by the stove, drinking the remains of the coffee. Gwyn pulled a chair to the stove. "Ma'am," he said, "I'm sorry about last night. That was a rotten trick with your purse. I bought you a present, see?" He held out a cigarette packet. Nancy took the packet. Said Nancy. "All right, boy." She twisted a spill of newspaper and lit it from the stove. "Where you find the money?" "I've been saving a bit," said Gwyn. "I thought you was coming it yesterday," said Nancy. "Ma'am, If I'd belted Roger, what would have happened? Would we have been sacked? Depends how hard, doesn't it? You wouldn't mind if I belted him? Him? Ah. Oh, he says, where's my photos? He says. Who's moved them off the table? He says. You got no right, he says. And there was all that sticky on my table I just polished. And then he comes in and thinks he can flash his pound notes around. Who? Him. Lord Muck. When I think of the title heads I've seen in that dining room, he's not even a gentleman. And when he was flashing his pound notes, I thought, if there was justice in heaven, there'd be others with checkbooks. I'll lay knife and fork, and we'll see how you manages a pear, my laddo. A pear, ma'am? It takes a gentleman to eat a pear proper, said Nancy. He had it on the floor in no time. Oh, I made him look a fool. Nancy pulled on her cigarette, and her eyes narrowed. Gwyn said nothing. When his mother did this, she was living in her memories. Yes, she said. If we all had our rights, there'd be others with checkbooks. My Bertram could eat a pear lovely. Gwyn held his breath and tried not to move. Yes, ma'am? What, boy? Oh, sorry, ma'am. You done that trap door yet? Said Nancy. Yes, ma'am. Show me, said Nancy. They went upstairs to Alison's room, knocked, and went in. I done it properly, see, ma'am, said Gwyn. Brass screws. Yes, you done that. Nancy sat on the bed. Brass screws for coffins, she said. Yes, ma'am. You don't know, boy, them plates was for my bottom drawer. You have them for your bottom drawer, he says, and let them think what they like. We'd be married, he said. He didn't care. If they don't like it, he says, they know what they can do. But he didn't know what they could do, boy. What, ma'am? If there was justice in heaven, said Nancy, I should be sitting at that table today saying potatoes was cold, not them. But he didn't know what they could do. What, ma'am? That jealous idiot outside, said Nancy. That mad fool. Oh, it was accident, of course, they said. But there isn't a pound notes in London to pay me for losing my Mr. Bertram, just when I had him landed, high and dry. Roger was setting up his tripod again on the bank. Alison sat in the shade of the stone of Gronw among the meadowsweet. Clive stood in the river. "Are you really going to spend all day clicking that thing?" said Alison. "I want to go up the mountain. It's stifling here. There'll be some wind at the top." "As long as you don't melt on the way up." "I want to go up the peat road," said Alison. "For crying out loud," said Clive. "Look, Ally, if you want to go, go!" Alison went along the riverbank to a track that led up the mountain from the ford. The track followed the line of a stream between hedgerows to a stone barn and a sheep dip. Then it rose above the stream, and it was the peat road, and Alison was on the mountain. The fields lay below her, and she was among bracken fronds and boulders of white quartz and flowering thorn. Already Roger and Clive were no more than spots of colour, and soon the house was hidden. Alison rested on a slate outcrop. She was very hot. Now that the house was out of sight, there was nothing to tell her where she was, and her fear brushed against her. Cold kippers. It works. Still, nothing changes here, rocks and bracken. It could be 1,000 years ago. Cold kippers. Alison looked at the cliffs above her, each with its trail of frost-broken slate down the hillside. Something moved. Dark. Not a sheep. Alison screamed, but there was a clatter of stones across her path, and the way was blocked by a figure standing against the sun. "It's okay, girl." "Oh, Gwyn." He was panting. "What's up? Expecting bows and arrows and 2 coats of quick, non-drying woad, were you?" "Yes, almost," Alison laughed. "I am stupid." "You can say that again." "How did you know I was here?" "I was listening to your idyll back there. All I had to do was race you along the stream, then hide here." "Gwyn, we mustn't." "Mustn't what?" "Talk like this." "Like what?" "We mustn't talk at all." "Why not? You in quarantine for smallpox, are you?" "You know Mummy says I mustn't talk to you." Gwyn gazed at the crags, and slowly followed them to the next hillside, and down to the valley, to the mountain on the other side of the valley, and straight up to the sky. "I can't see her," he said.
"Don't. Please, what do you want?"
"I want you to be yourself for a change," said Gwyn. "That's what I want. Let's climb this metamorphic Welsh mountain."
Mummy'll be so angry if she finds out, and I hate upsetting her.
"That's the all-year-round cultural pursuit in your family," said Gwyn. "Not upsetting Mummy. You're not having much luck with it, though, are you? And your stepfather's in trouble with my mum, isn't he? You'll find it tough going there. She's the blue on armour plating."
"Why are you so horrid about people?" said Alison.
"My mum, you mean? She hates my guts."
"She doesn't."
"A lot you know," said Gwyn. "What are you wanting to do when you leave school, Alison?"
"Mummy wants me to go abroad for a year."
"But what do you want to do?"
"I've not thought. I expect I'll go abroad."
"And Roger?"
"He'll join Clive in his business, I expect."
"Real fireballs, aren't you?" said Gwyn.
"What are you going to do, then, that's so marvellous?"
Gwyn was silent.
"Gwyn?"
"At Aber," said Gwyn. "They want me to stay on at school."
"I can see you in about 30 years, said Alison. "You'll be Professor of Welsh."
"Oh, not me. I've got to get out of this place. There's nothing here but sheep."
"I thought it meant a lot to you," said Alison.
"It does, but you can't eat a feeling."
"What will you do?"
"At the moment, a likely chance is I'll be behind a shop counter in a couple of months."
"Oh, no."
"Oh, yes."
"Why?"
"My mum thinks it's a good idea."
"Oh, the stupid woman."
"Now who's being horrid?" said Gwyn. They climbed for a while without talking.
"What will you do if she makes you leave?"
"I've got plans," said Gwyn. They were on top of the mountain. Before them stretched a plateau slashed with colour, reds and blacks and blues and browns and greens rolling into the heat. Gwyn and Alison made for a cairn on a hillock.
"The valley's disappeared," said Alison.
"It's the plateau. That's what does it. It's the same height either side." They sat with their backs against the cairn.
"When you were by the tank before lunch," said Alison, "could you see me in the water?"
"No."
"From where I sat, it was as if we were right next to each other, like we are now, and you were watching me."
"I didn't think you were anywhere near until I saw you in the window."
"You put your hand in the water and touched my hair, and then the ripples broke it up."
"Fancy that," said Gwyn.
"Yes."
"Fancy that. Alison, done any physics, have you?"
"A bit."
"Then you'll know. The image of an object in a mirror appears to be as far behind the mirror as the object is in front. So you wouldn't look as big as me, and the angles were all wrong anyhow for you to see your reflection. So it wasn't your reflection."
"The water was glittery," said Alison, "but I could tell it was me. My colour of hair and face and... well, it just was."
"You saw a blonde reflected in the water," said Gwyn. "Her hair came down either side of her face, and she was fair-skinned. That's all you can be sure of."
"You're confusing me," said Alison. "I was trying to tell you about feeling happy, and you go and make it all ordinary with your angles and mirrors." "Ordinary? Girl, you can't be that stupid. Wake up. You saw the woman in the picture. You saw Blodeuwedd." "No, no, 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 no."
Alison turned her face to the rocks of the cairn.
"Don't talk like that. It must have been me reflected in the glass, in the window. Help me, Gwyn."
"I want to help you, but you don't help me," said Gwyn.
"This thing won't go away if you shut your eyes, Alison.
Come along, and I'll show you."
They set off across the plateau. "Did you scrape the painting off?" said Alison.
"Did you scrape the pattern?" said Gwyn.
Parched grass lay like bloom on the mountain. "It's so big," said Alison. "All the things that seem important don't matter up here. It's so big."
"Remember that, then," said Gwyn.
"Mountains and cold kippers?"
Gwyn and Alison laughed. "Your stepbrother's a right charmer," said Gwyn.
"It's only Roger's way," said Alison, "and he feels dreadful about it afterwards. He's had a pretty rough time. His mother walked out, you know. Mummy calls her the Birmingham Belle."
"Nice lady, your mum," said Gwyn. "How does Roger take that?"
She never says it in front of Roger, not on purpose. He was very fond of his mother. Yes, he is touchy, said Gwyn. The three of us are lame ducks by the sound of it. My legs snap easy, that's all. He started to waddle with a limp. Gwyn, you're impossible. Whack, said Gwyn. Where are we going? I mustn't be late. Your sense of direction's not much good, girl. We're making for the valley. Head for that rock straight in front. Why? What is it? The Ravenstone. You'll see. The plateau dipped to the outcrop, and then... Gosh, said Alison. The Ravenstone was a mass of vertical slate sticking 4 or 5 feet out of the edge of the valley, a platform, as Gwyn and Alison approached it. But at its base, the green mountain fell sheer to the river 1,500 feet below. How super, said Alison. How does the grass manage to grow? It's the sheep are the problem, said Gwyn. Mostyn Lewis-Jones breeds them with short left legs, and Gareth Pugh breeds short right legs. There's the boundary fence between the 2 farms, see, right down the mountain. Mostyn sheep eat from right to left, and Gareth's from left to right, across the slope. When they reach the fence, they have to walk backwards and then start again. Isn't it cruel to the sheep? Said Alison. Why? When they're on level ground. No, they have special stilts for the short legs, said Gwyn, called weather-go-nimbles. It's an old Welsh craft. They used to carve them in the long winter evenings, but now they're mostly made of fiberglass. Gosh, said Alison. Gwyn, what's the matter? Gwyn had sunk to his knees. He fell forward with his head and arms hanging down the Ravenstone, and his feet drummed the turf. Are you ill? Gwyn was red in the face and shaking all over. It's an old Welsh custom, he gasped, called soak in the Saxon. What? Oh, Alison hit his shoulders. Oh, and I believed you. Oh, Gwyn. They both hung over the Ravenstone and scattered the sheep along the mountain with their laughter. Don't you dare tell anyone, said Alison. I'd never forgive you. Oh, stilts. And she collapsed again. Gwyn rolled over and sat on the edge of the stone. Don't worry, girl. I don't go blabbing. Aye, but that was a good one. Alison sat up. If it had been anybody else, I'd have wanted to die, she said. I really did believe you. You won't tell? No, it'd spoil it. Gosh, it's the funniest thing in years. You're a strange girl, said Gwyn. 1 minute you're petrified, the next you haven't a care in the world. It's only that... The owls, said Alison. They frighten me. Come here, you strange girl, said Gwyn, and listen. We've had a good laugh, and we're on top of the mountains, and it's a sunny day, and there's nothing to be frightened of. But you must listen, because we've got to go back soon. I can see why these valleys make good reservoirs, said Alison. All you have to do is put a dam across the bottom end. Not the most tactful remark, said Gwyn, but you're dead right. It's quite a thought, though, said Alison. That thin bit of silver down there would fill the whole valley in time, and we'd be sitting here on the edge of a lake. Have you noticed how you can hear the river even though it's so far off? Said Gwyn. And the motorbike going up the pass? Sound rises. Listen to that river. It never stops. It never has stopped since it began. It was the last sound Llywelyn heard before he was killed. Garner heard it in his turn. We hear it now. Gwyn? Shh. Don't be frightened. Listen. Suppose, said Gwyn, just suppose a long time back, hundreds and hundreds of years, someone somehow found a way to control some power or force and used it to make a woman out of flowers. And suppose it went wrong, got out of hand, I don't know. It got out of hand because it wasn't neutral anymore. There was a brain behind it. Do you follow? Neutral like a battery, I mean. But why wasn't it finished with long ago? Said Alison. I don't think it can be finished, said Gwyn. I think this valley really is a kind of reservoir. The house, look, smack in the middle, with the mountains all round, shutting it in, guarding the house.
They think the power is always there and always will be. It builds up and builds up until it has to be let loose, like filling and emptying a dam. And it works through people. I said to Roger that I thought the plates were batteries and you were the wires. If the force was in the plates, said Alison, I've let it out, and everything's right again. No, this is what frightens me. It's not as quick as that. The force was in the plates and in the painting, but it's in us now. That's where the pattern's gone. And Hugh's trying to deal with it. Hugh? Why him?
He's a descendant of Gwydion, or of Clochlaw Goffus. It comes to the same thing. And all his talk is something he can't quite remember or can't quite forget. He doesn't understand it, mind. It's more of an instinct with him, it's that deep. For instance, he says the painting was done by his uncle. Well, you saw how old it was, didn't you? But I bet he's not wrong. It's a question of which uncle.
But Hugh's a labourer, said Alison.
He's not a labourer to the people in this valley, said Gwyn. I'll tell you that much. It's a queer word they use for him. Old, too. Can't give you the English, but it's something between sir and master and father. Respectful and friendly, very clannish. Anyway, Hugh's responsible.
You're right, said Alison. I know you are. I felt it, but couldn't put it into words like you can. I've been so happy this afternoon. I can understand how she feels always alone. No wonder she's cruel. What will happen next?
I've no idea, said Gwyn. We must watch out, though.
It's going to be hard to see each other, said Alison. My mother's dug her toes in and she won't budge.
This is more important than your mum, said Gwyn. If there is anything, you're to come at once. And we'll meet each day by the seat in the kitchen garden. You can't be snooped on there, the hedge is too thick. What time?
About 4, said Alison. She's usually resting in the afternoons. I'll explain to Roger. We're all in it, aren't we?
Gwyn stood up. I suppose we are. I can't trust myself to leave his nose unbent, though, so you better tell him. Red, black, and green, is it? I wonder who's the earth.
Sorry, said Alison. I'm not with you.
Try changing the plug on your record player sometime, you'll see.
It's a portable, said Alison.
A portable? Said Gwyn. Is it here? Will it play?
Yes. Why?
I'd like to borrow it for a few hours, said Gwyn. If Mummy will let you. Come on, girl, home again, jiggity-jig. They walked back to the peat road. You might find out some more about your father's cousin, said Gwyn.
Bertram?
Yes.
I'll try, said Alison. There's a sort of fake mystery about him. I've noticed whenever he's mentioned, Mummy goes all tragic.
They stopped at the scree where Gwyn had been hiding. Come on, Alison, cheer up, said Gwyn. Please don't look so miserable.
I'm happy, said Alison. Gwyn, wait by the hen-house now.
Right, said Gwyn. Well, I better go.
Yes.
Tomorrow, then, 4 o'clock.
Yes, Gwyn. Don't let her. The school.
She'll not wreck my chances, he said.
Shall I tell you?
If I go behind that counter, there's night school. And that's not all. I've been planning. If I go behind that counter, there's nobody'll keep me there. I've been saving up, and I've bought a set of records. And if I go behind that counter, I'll buy a record player. Night school's not everything. I can tell you, Alison. I couldn't anyone else. But I can tell you. These records, they teach you to speak properly. That's what matters. That and night school.
No, there's nothing wrong with the way you speak, except when you're putting it on to annoy people.
But I'm a taff, aren't I?
It doesn't matter, said Alison.
It doesn't matter as long as you haven't got it, said Gwyn, and he rattled down the scree to the water.
Alison watched him out of sight. Then she walked along the peat road, off the mountain, past the barn and the sheep-dip, over the ford, and climbed through the garden to the house. Inside the house the dark was cool, and Alison heard the tea trolley in the parlour. She hurried upstairs, and a few seconds later came down again and went out through the cloakroom. She found Gwyn sitting on the tree stump by the hen hut. "Here," said Alison. "I want to give you a present." She pushed a box into Gwyn's hand. "For today."
"I haven't anything for you, girl."
"Never mind," said Alison, and she ran back through the wood. Gwyn opened the box. "Greetings from the land of song," he read.
and then the small lettering at the bottom, Made in England. "Not a sausage," said Roger, "except 36 frames of trees on a hill. It must have been a fluke with the other batch." "I dare say," said Clive. "Where's Ally?" "Margaret took her for a walk. Dad, when are we going home?" "Nearly 3 weeks, isn't it?" said Clive. "Any chance of going sooner?" "Why, what's up? Don't you hit it off with Margaret and Ally? I know it's often sticky at first, these things, you know. They usually shake down all right in the end." "That'll be the same whether we're here or not," said Roger. "It's this place that's giving me the pip. I've got to get out, Dad. Please, let's go home." "No can do," said Clive. "We're geared to stay the 3 weeks, and it'd be no end of a palaver if we changed." "A lot of work for Margaret," said Roger. "That's it," said Clive. "Hello, here's my favourite princess. Had a nice outing?" Alison came into the table tennis room, holding a box camera by the strap. "Yes, thanks. Roger, could you develop this film for me, please?" "What, now?" "Please, before tea. Mummy and I have been taking snaps, and Mummy asked if you would, so can you see how they've turned out?" "It's not as simple as that," said Roger. "It takes time." "Do what you can. There's a good lad," said Clive. "OK," said Roger. They walked together along the path behind the stables. Roger stopped at the end door. He put his ear to it. "Dad?" Clive and Alison came back. "Listen. What can you hear?" "Somebody moving about inside," said Clive. "Rustling." "The door's padlocked," said Roger. "And I heard exactly the same thing last week." "Did you, by Jove?" said Clive. "Let's find out what it is, then." "None of the keys fit. I've tried." "We'll see about that," said Clive. "Old Hoojima flips at the front, breaking the drive. I'll give him a shout." He went round the corner of the building. "Oi! Here a minute, will you?" "What are you looking so green for?" said Roger. "I can smell petrol," said Alison. "It makes me sick." "Now then," said Clive. He came back with Hugh half-bacon. "This door. Let's have it open." "No, sir," said Hugh. "It's locked. Where's the key?" "It is not opening," said Hugh. "That is a beauty padlock, see?" "Yes," said Clive. "The key, half-bacon. Where's the key?" "Gone, sir." "You mean lost?" "In the river," said Hugh. "All time. She locked the door and threw the key." "What the blazes for?" said Clive. "Yes, sir. No, excuse me, I must go working to Mrs. Bradley." Hugh shambled away. "No one," said Clive, "no one can be that dense." "They're mad, every one of them," said Roger. "Dad, let's pack up and go home." "Steady on," said Clive. "I think we've been a bit imaginative. They can't all be as cuckoo as that." "Can't they?" said Roger. "I'll tell you something. You know I've been swimming every afternoon. Well, 4 days ago I was walking up from the river, and I happened to notice that Gwyn character sitting on the kitchen garden seat, you know, the one that's let into the very thick part of the hedge. He was just sitting." "What's wrong with that?" said Clive. "The next day," said Roger, "he was there again. I've been watching, and every afternoon at 4 o'clock he comes and sits on that seat for half an hour. He doesn't do anything. He sits, and he glowers, and then he goes. Every day, the same time. Now, if he's supposed to be the bright one, what does that make the others?" "Have you thought about the madman who jumps in the river at the same time every day and then goes spying?" said Alison. "Give us that film," said Roger. "Let's see what masterpieces of the art we have here." He went off. Clive sat on the edge of the fish tank and mopped his neck. Alison sat by him. She kept looking at the water and then up to her bedroom. "Odd about that door," said Clive. "I'd have sworn there was somebody inside. What's the place used for?" "I don't know," said Alison. "There are so many empty rooms." "Odd. I don't like to feel I'm being bamboozled by domestics, and that half-bacon fellow was definitely playing me up." "His English isn't very good," said Alison. "It's not that bad," said Clive. "Ah, well. Who did he say lost the key?" "She," said Alison. "Nancy?" said Clive. "I wonder. Could be. I'll ask her."
Alison dipped her hand in the water. "Enjoying your holiday?" said Clive.
"Yes, thank you, Clive."
How's your mother liking it?"
"Fine. Mummy adores the country. Walks and picking things up. We brought some feathers back today. Lovely, pale, creamy ones with brown, wavy bars round the edges."
"You don't want to go home early, then?" said Clive.
"Why?"
"I was thinking you might be a wee bit out of sorts with it lately. I was thinking you might not be very happy here."
"Clive, you're the kindest man I've ever met," said Alison.
"Easy does it, Master Harry." They laughed. Gwyn came up the path from the kitchen garden onto the drive. He hesitated when he saw Clive and Alison by the tank. Then he walked away towards the yard. Clive turned his wrist. 4:20, he said. "Well, I never." Alison played with the water. "I think I'll drift along and have a word with old Nance before tea," said Clive.
"I'll stay here," said Alison.
When Clive had gone, Alison watched her reflection in the water. At first she was trying to decide whether what she saw now was what she had seen from her bedroom.
"What is it? Something's happened. Something stopped. Something stopped. What? The rake."
Alison swivelled round. Hugh Half-Bacon was leaning on his rake, his head forward, fixed on her. She turned and looked straight into another pair of eyes, the same intense blue. It was Gwyn. He was in the dining-room window. Hugh was still there. Alison felt gripped between their looking, as if between pincers.
"Stop peering at me."
A motorcycle engine broke into life, and its sound moved away up the road. She wrinkled her nose against the fumes.
"Allie, why didn't you tell me? Where did you take this?"
Roger came charging out of the cloakroom, and a big sheet of wet paper was plastering itself over his arms and chest.
"Quick, here! What is it?"
"Oh, that," said Alison. "I saw there was one number left, so I snapped your Bryn thing from the road as we came past. It was just to use the film up."
"What's this? There, between those two fir trees on the left." "Why are you making such a fuss?"
said Alison.
"It's only Gwyn."
"Need a fair old job, throwing that spear?" Gwyn had found the stone of Gronw from where he stood among the trees. The Bryn commanded the valley, and he could watch Alison's movements and be ready for any chance. But there was no chance. Then it was time to go to the kitchen garden. She did not come. Tea. When he saw her laughing with her stepfather by the water, Gwyn's hand squeezed the box in his pocket. She had laughed like that on the Ravenstone. Gwyn walked towards the yard. "Where you been all afternoon?" said Nancy. "Out," said Gwyn. "Fine time I've had. Not a hand's turn to help me," said Nancy. "Take this tea trolley." Gwyn pushed the trolley through the dining-room. From the dark of the room, Alison and her stepfather, sitting together outside, were as brightly lit as if they were on a stage. Gwyn watched, and when Clive left Alison, he moved to the window. "Look at me, girl. Look this way. Look, look, look." Alison was studying her reflection. "You'll look. You will look." Alison started to fidget. She was no longer interested in the water. "That's it, girl." When Gwyn returned to the kitchen, his mother was not there, but he heard her walking about in the flat above, backwards and forwards, again and again, then a bump. Gwyn went upstairs. The old leather suitcase was on Nancy's bed, and she was flinging clothes out of drawers and cupboards. "Come here," said Nancy. "I got a bone to pick with you, my lad." "What are you doing?" said Gwyn. "Clearing out," said Nancy. "I told him, 48 hours, from tomorrow, and I don't want no references, nor no in-lieux. I'm off, I told him." "Only 2 more days?" said Gwyn. "Only 2 days? Ma'am, not yet. Please, ma'am." "How did he find out?" "Nobody seen what I done with that key? Nobody. You, is it? Soft soaping me and then running to them with your tales?" "No, ma'am. What key?" "After all I done for you, running to them with your tales. Think you're one of them now, don't you? Know it all, don't you? Right, my lad, right.
You know where you're starting next month. That's you finished, boy."
"I'll come back when you're more civilized," said Gwyn. He managed to close the door of the flat behind him and to walk down the stairs. He sat on the bottom step, his head in his hands. Through the distance inside him, he heard footsteps far away, and voices and rustling, and through his wet fingers he saw 2 pairs of shoes stop in front of him, then move round him, and he felt the wood creak, and he was alone again, and no one had said his name.
How absolutely embarrassing.
Roger shut the door. He laid the print on his bed.
"Haven't you ever cried?" said Alison.
Roger stretched a nylon washing line across a corner of the room and hung the print from it.
"Years ago, maybe. Not recently, and certainly not in public." "What about when your mother left?" "Shut it. Don't be coarse."
"You've heard nothing yet," said Roger.
"I don't know why you're so thin-skinned about your parents," said Alison. "You've done pretty well out of it. Clive's sweet, but he's a bit of a rough diamond, isn't he? Mummy's people were very surprised when she married him."
"Yes, she was pretty damned quick off the mark for a widow," said Roger. "Does she always home on to the nearest bank book?"
"Roger!"
Alison sat on the bed.
"I ought to go and see what's the matter with Gwyn."
"On your head be it," said Roger. "But I'd leave well alone if I were you. A couple more days and you'll have no problems."
"You're hateful." "Now then, Ali," said Roger. "This place'll be a lot better without those 2 weirdies. Admit." "You know that what Gwyn told me makes sense," said Alison. "And if it was anybody else you'd agree."
"What? That battery and wires hogwash?"
"You feel he's right," said Alison, "but you can't bear to think he's cleverer than you are. That's your trouble. You couldn't have worked it out like Gwyn has."
"You call that working it out? That moonshine? That claptrap?"
"He knows instinctively. He belongs here."
"Instinctively? Do me a favour. He wants to believe it. Him and Bacon Bonce. Ali, let's stop this. OK, Gwyn's intelligent, but he's not one of us, and he never will be. He's a yob, an intelligent yob. That's all there is to it."
"What will you do when you leave school?" said Alison.
"Go in with Dad, of course."
"You want to?"
"Yes." "Well, what else?"
"You liked photography," said Alison, "and you're good at it. Wouldn't you like to be a photographer?"
"You mean professionally? What would I use for money? It takes years to become established. Anyway, Dad has it all lined up for me."
"I'm serious," said Alison. "If you wanted to be a photographer, would you stick out against Clive?"
"Would you against Margaret?"
"I don't know," said Alison. "It's terrible. I've never felt anything that strongly."
"What started you off on this?" said Roger.
"Gwyn," said Alison. "He's upset me. What do you think will happen to him?"
"He'll be a teacher, or something equally wet."
"His mother's threatening to make him leave school and work in a shop."
"Then he'll work in a shop," said Roger.
"Can't you realize," said Alison, "he has to find everything for himself. And the awful part is, he knows this, but he doesn't know where to begin. It's ghastly. He's... Oh, Roger, he saved up and bought an elocution course on gramophone records."
"You'd never guess to listen to him," said Roger.
"He can't use them. He hasn't got a record player. That's what I mean. Doesn't it make you feel ashamed?"
"Not really."
"You smell of petrol," said Alison.
"It was that rush job I did on your film," said Roger. "And it'll be meths, not petrol."
"It's petrol," said Alison. "I feel sick."
The weather changed overnight. The valley was sealed by clouds. "It's 4 o'clock, girl. Aren't you forgetting something?" Alison dropped her sketchpad. Gwyn was in the parlour doorway.
"You're not allowed in here," said Alison.
"Sorry, miss. Will I get the sack?"
"Mummy may come."
"What's that to me?" said Gwyn. "I'm going the day after tomorrow."
"Alison, tomorrow?" One day? Where have you been, girl? Mummy saw us up the mountain. She was watching through binoculars. She was waiting for me, and now I daren't. I just daren't. Gwyn, please go. I'm going after tomorrow first thing, so I'm here now. I've nothing to lose. But I have, said Alison. You don't know. You better tell me then, said Gwyn. I'm listening. Alison knocked open the catch on the French window and ran from the house onto the drive. The kitchen garden's over there, said Gwyn. He had caught up with her in a few strides. Go away, said Alison. Anyone can see us. Not likely, said Gwyn. But the kitchen garden's nice and quiet. Or shall we stay here? Your wish is my command. The kitchen garden was shut off from the rest of the grounds by a slate wall and a hedge. A seat made from old ship's timbers was set in the hedge for the view out over the river to the mountains. That ravine up there is where the foxes go, said Gwyn. The black hiding. They go up the waterfalls, see? And the cliffs are that steep nothing can come at them, and the hounds lose the scent, and they lie till it's safe. Then they skip out at the top in the peat. Cunning. What do you want? Said Alison. You asked me that before, said Gwyn. The answer's not changed. You have. No, Gwyn, you don't understand. I daren't see you. Mummy's threatened what she'll do, and she means it. What can she do, girl? Shoot you? You don't understand. I don't understand. I understand what it's been like since we went up the mountain. I'll give you that, free, girl. Your mum couldn't do anything worse than these last 5 days. Go on. You tell me. Mummy says, if I talk to you again, she'll make me... She says I'll have to leave the choir. What? Said Gwyn. She means it. I'll have to leave the choir, and she won't renew my subscription for the tennis club. Club? You see, Gwyn. See? Gwyn flung his head back against the wood. See? Don't make that noise. Everyone'll hear. You think I care? Said Gwyn. She said that, did she, your mum? And you didn't tell her what she could do with the choir and the tennis? What do you mean? It did happen, said Gwyn. We were up there on the mountain. It did all happen. Of course, said Alison. It was lovely. And you gave me a box, said Gwyn. He put his hand in his mackintosh pocket. This box? Why? I was happy. I wanted to give you a present, said Alison. And the choir and the tennis, said Gwyn. You put that against this? It's Mummy. I can't bear to see her hurt or upset. No, said Gwyn. No. All right, girl. Don't be angry, said Alison. You frighten me when you're angry. I'm not angry, said Gwyn. Never mind. Did you find out about your cousin? Yes, said Alison. He was very clever with his hands. Nothing about how he was killed? Alison shook her head. Shall I tell you then? Said Gwyn. You know, said Alison. How did you manage that? I thought my mum would have an idea about what's going on, said Gwyn. So I whipped some of your stepfather's fags for her as bait. She only nibbled, though. But she did mention this Bertram. Then a couple of nights back, I siphoned off half a glass of port from the decanter. It's all she needs, and she was in the right mood to get a kick out of pinching it. And that was that. She as good as said Hugh did him in. But I shouldn't worry. No, Cousin Bertram snuffed it up the pass there. Road accident. Is that all? Said Alison. The way Mummy's always rolled her eyes, I thought he must have killed himself at least. I used to make up stories about him. He was crossed in love. She'd married another. He looked that sort in his photographs, very dashing. Bit too dashing, said Gwyn. You're right about good with his hands. He had this vintage motorbike, see? Done it up himself. Then one day he's coming over the pass, 1 in 4 just there, and he failed to negotiate a bend, as they say. He'd left his brakes at home. The bike jammed itself on some slate, but he went 300 feet. Ka-choom, splat. Alison. Alison screwed up her eyes and her mouth was drawn tight. I'm a fool, said Gwyn. I didn't mean to upset you. I'm all right, said Alison. Gwyn, I must go. It's tea time. You'll come tomorrow? Said Gwyn. I can't.
I'm going back to Aber. I know. Tomorrow, Alison, please. Can't you see? You must.
Stop it, said Alison. Stop it, stop it. Stop tearing me between you, you and Mummy. You go on till I don't know who I am or what I'm doing.
I only want you to be yourself, said Gwyn.
And what's that? Said Alison. What you make me? I'm one person with Mummy and another with you. I can't argue. You twist everything I say round to what you want. Is that fair?
You will be here, won't you? Said Gwyn. Tomorrow.
It's the last time. Gwyn, please.
How now, brown cow? Roger called. Are you having trouble, Ally? He was climbing through the hedge at the other side of the garden. What's he on about? Said Gwyn.
Nothing, said Alison.
What's that brown cow?
Nothing, Gwyn.
Tea, Ally, said Roger.
Yes, I'm coming.
How's the rain in Spain? Said Roger. Still mainly on the plain? What's he on about, Alison?
Be quiet, Roger, said Alison.
What's that about cows and rain? Said Gwyn. Don't tell me you haven't reached the lesson yet, said Roger. Surely it comes on the very first record.
Roger!
You told him, whispered Gwyn.
You told him?
Told him?
No, said Alison.
You told him. Was it a good laugh?
No, Gwyn.
Oh, I bet it was.
What else? What else was funny? You're wrong.
You won't have told him about the stilts, will you? Not when you'd got the big laugh.
Not that way, Gwyn. I promise it wasn't.
Couldn't run back quick enough, could you? Said Gwyn. Ally didn't say much, actually, said Roger. I mean, I don't know whether you're using the Complete Improver Prole set or the shorter course of Oik's exercises for getting by in the shop. She didn't say, really.
Alison?
Gwyn backed from them.
Alison? Gwyn, don't look at me like that. Don't.
Alison!
Don't look at me. Don't. Stop him, Roger. Roger, make him stop. Make him.
Now, Ally, it's okay. It's okay. Calm down. It's all right, Ally. He's done a bunk. He's gone. I told you he was a yob. He sat behind a thorn bush high in the valley, waiting for dusk. The first part of the climb into the rocks might be seen from the house. He ate a little of the cheese and scooped the stream water into his hands. He was wearing both his shirts, his pullover on top of them, and Roger's anorak and boots. These boots had a bit of all right. He had kept low along the stream and quiet. So far it had been easy, but now he had to climb the black hiding, and the noise of its waters pounded him. It was dark enough to move. There'd been hardly any rain for several weeks, and the channels were running slack, so that he could climb between the loose slate of the cliffs and the foam of the water. Them cliffs and screes. By, foxes know what they're at. He climbed the narrow thread of rock, smoothed, hollowed by waterfalls. On either side the decayed buttresses of the black hiding rose above him and fell below him. He rested on a flat stone, his feet hanging over the drop. Lamps were showing in the house. "Cosy, is it for you down there? You can't touch me. I've done with you lot." He turned from the valley and climbed. He was near the top of the black hiding, and the water lost its fierceness, and soon he would come to the line of slates, upended in the moss, that pointed over the mountain to the next valley. From that valley he could reach a main road, thumb a lift, and be in Aberystwyth next morning. The top of the black hiding was a deep stone gutter, which ran into the plateau. Behind him the crags fell to the valley and the spark of lamplight. He trod carefully, wanting to stay dry if possible, but the gutter was thick with boulders, and when one of the boulders moved under his feet, and screamed, rose, and came for him, he scrambled backwards up the shale wall and forgot his wet feet. He had stepped on the black sow. The sow squealed as it strained to reach him. He began to slide back towards the jaws, which squelched and gobbled the shale that rained from where he was trying to stop his fall. The head was turned side on to him, the teeth like broken bottles. "Worst bite there is. Takes a lump clean out. You'll not be seeing much of Aber if she gets you." His hand thrashed against something firm. He spun himself round and grabbed. It was a tree root. He swung clear of the gutter, hanging free, and kicked up to the trunk, which grew sideways from the rock. He climbed into the branches of the tree. Well, that's me for the night. Roll on death, eh? Now, daylight by 4, over the top and into the next valley by 7, main road by 10. Blast Gareth Pugh. Never mind, she'll be clear of Aber before she can get back. He ate some more food, and then he wedged himself between the trunk and a tangle of branches. It was a warm night, and he was sheltered from the wind, but he couldn't sleep for more than a few minutes at a time. He was cold and cramped. The lamps went out in the valley. He dozed and shivered and dozed and ate the last of the food and dozed. He woke. He was cold to the bone, and his head had fallen backwards across a branch. He was looking at the edge of the plateau 30 feet above him. There was a man on the plateau. There'll be a right sort out if he treads on that pig. Darkness came and went with clouds over the moon, and the water rattled the stones, but he watched. He saw the scree move before he heard any change in the note of the stream. A long slough of rubble farther up the gutter hit the water where it lay in a hollow. The bubbles rose like silver blossom. Sheep? That old pig? But there was a new sound very close, broken by the water, but he could hear it, and it went on and on. A voice, humming, mumbling, scarcely words, but it was a kind of song. He moved his head to peer through the branches. The man was sitting at the foot of the tree. The man came to the end of his song, but he did not go. He sat and pushed his cap back on his head. "Lovely night, isn't it?" he said. "Yes, lovely, for the time of year." "Leave me alone." "You come down now, boy." "I'm fine here." "You're needed." "No one needs me, and I need nothing." "Then you are very lucky," said Hugh. "What will you do with all your riches?" "I'm clearing out. This time tomorrow I'll be in Birmingham, and that's the last you'll see of me." "You won't run away," said Hugh. "You care too much." "I don't care about anything. I trod on Gareth Pugh's sow, and I wasn't bothered. You want to watch out for that sow. She's a nasty pair of chompers." "She was only stopping you from leaving the valley," said Hugh. "Not half she wasn't." "It is always the black-hiding," said Hugh. "Tell me another." "I shall tell you one other," said Hugh. "Then you will come down. Are you thinking yet how I came straight to you?" "No." "We come here," said Hugh. "It is the place." "I'm in this tree because I don't want to tread on any more pigs in the dark. If you want to make something of it, that's your business." Hugh crossed the stream and pulled himself onto a ledge in the opposite wall of the gutter. "Now," he said, "come down and I'll show you the chance in this. Down to the foot of the tree. There. Reach into the crack where the root grows. You must put your arm right in." "It's a dead end." "Feel to one side," said Hugh. "Careful, careful, take out your hand." "Well?"
"Mr. Hugh, I'm sorry," said Gwyn. He was holding a spearhead in the palm of his hand. It was made of flint, and was so thin that the moon shone through it, and the fretting of its surface made it a leaf of sculpted light and stone. "This was the spear," said Gwyn.
"A year he took to make it," said Hugh. "Gronw Pebber, Lord of Penllyn."
"It's older than that," said Gwyn. "It's very old."
"That was a long time ago," said Hugh.
Gwyn put his arm back in the rock. There were several things lying inside. Most of what he touched fell to pieces before he could pull it out. Leather, wood, or cloth, all rotted in the wet. He laid a stone beside the flint. It was a ball of quartz the size of his fist, and a face was painted on it. It was only a simple double arch of brow, like a pick head, running to a short nose or beak, and 2 dots for eyes. He found this pattern again and again on all the solid things, on jars and pebbles and a slate disc, pierced to be worn on a cord round the neck. The simple line stared out, human or bird face.
It was impossible to tell. "How long has this been happening?" said Gwyn.
"There's no saying. But we of the blood must meet it in our time, and we bring here what we have."
"I didn't understand," said Gwyn. "I felt I could blow that house up just by looking at it."
"Perhaps you could," said Hugh. "Here, in this valley, now. That is how the power is spent. Through us, within us, the three who suffer every time."
"But why, Hugh?"
"Because we gave this power a thinking mind. We must bear that mind, leash it, yet set it free, through us, in us, so that no one else may suffer."
"What's going to happen?"
"I don't know. She's here, the lady, and you have made her owls. She will go hunting, but don't let her destroy. She will be the worse for my fault, and my uncle's fault, and my grandfather's fault, who tried to stop what can't be stopped. Him with the painting, him with the plates. We built the dyke of sand and won a little space, and we have suffered for it no less than if we had faced our time."
"Who's we?" said Gwyn.
"Me, your mother, him."
"My mum?"
Hugh smiled. "You did not know her. She was young and lovely. There was not a girl like Nancy."
"But my mum?"
"She was the winds of April."
Gwyn started to put things back into the rock. "Hugh, can I take any?"
"Have you some to leave?"
"Yes."
"At this time, all this is yours."
Gwyn lifted the thin slate with the eye pattern on it. He took a cardboard box from the anorak pocket and tipped the shell owl onto his hand and placed it next to the flint spearhead in the rock. Gwyn put the slate in the box. "Will you give this to Alison tomorrow?"
"You give it, boy."
"I can't. It's no good, I can't, Hugh."
"Just give it to her. Is that all?"
"Say it's for me." Gwyn hid the last pieces. He felt at the back of the hollow. "Here, there's something else."
"No, no."
Gwyn uncurled his fist and held it to the moon.
"What are these? Pieces of rubber? What are they doing here?"
"Rubber? That's not old."
"They're like sort of break blocks. Hugh, are these yours? Man, you did it! You knocked off Bertram."
"Keep them away, keep them away. He is the dark raven of my unreason. Keep them away."
"Mum said—"
"I didn't mean it," said Hugh. "He never had that old bike, outside the grounds, up and down, front drive to back, that's all. Then he drove to make me jump when I was working on the drive, and he had my Nancy, and I thought I'd show him what it is to land in the rhododendrons. So I took out the blocks. He never said he was going up the pass. I didn't know, but I should have known. We could not escape. Though I pebble-dashed her in the billiard room and hid her in the loft, and even he, the poor man, did what he thought best."
"What was that?"
"He shot her."
"Shot her? How could he? You're as mad as they said." Hugh came down to Gwyn and held his arm.
"The Lord must look to his people. I failed them in my time, and we were destroyed no less. You must not fail now. She is terrible in her loneliness and her pain. You are lord in blood to this valley now. You are the heir."
"Heir? That's a good word, that is," said Gwyn. "Heir to what? Don't tell me. Here's all I'll ever see of my father. I'm an heir right enough. Heir to a couple of break blocks."
"No, no, boy, you're wrong. You are the lord in blood to this valley after me. There is not one doubt of it. I am your father. You did not know."
Gwyn shook his head. "She never told me, Hugh. She never. And she did that to you? She did that?"
"It was my ending," said Hugh.
The rain fell straight, without wind, but inside the house it could not be heard except on the kitchen skylight.
Mustn't grumble, I suppose, said Clive. We've had a fair crack. Roger was sitting on the ammunition box in the cloakroom and prizing mud from his boots with a screwdriver. "Wet through," said Roger. "He's not even had the decency to clean them. And look at my anorak, plastered. What's he been at?" "I'll fix it," said Clive, "if you'll give me the sizes." "You've no need to buy a new lot unless it makes you feel better," said Roger. "Now, what's the matter?" "Nothing, Dad. You see to your shopping." "I did my best," said Clive. "You can't ask for more than that. I hope you'll understand." "When I'm old enough," said Roger. Clive sat on the box. "What's up?" "Nothing, Dad." "Growing pains?" "Oh, for Pete's sake." Roger threw the boots across the cloakroom. "It's a phase we all go through," said Clive. "I'm sorry, Dad. This house, I feel I could put a bomb under it." "Look, if it's as bad as that, we'll go home. I wanted us to have a holiday, not a ruddy breakdown." "Perhaps it's the weather," said Roger. Could be. These hills get a bit on top of you, don't they? Well, I'd better be off, or it'll be midnight before we're back." "Yes, Dad." Roger finished cleaning the boots. Then he sat for a while, letting the screwdriver swing between his knuckles against the box. The movement slowed. Stopped. "Of course," he said. He put on his anorak, fastened the hood, and went out of the cloakroom to the back of the stables. The rain hammered the roof, and he could hear nothing through the door when he listened. Roger fitted the screwdriver to the head of one of the screws and leaned on it. The slot gave, and white metal shone in the rust, but the thread moved, and one screw followed another, and the hasp dangled from the padlock free of the door. A mat of cobwebs filtered the light, and the room was preserved in dust. Roger laughed. "The old fraud!" He ran back to the house, head down, dodging puddles, and went to the bottom of the stairs. "Ali, the game's up, you old fraud. Come on down and explain yourself." "I'm washing my hair." "You've been outwitted by a mastermind, that's what. A padlock's no stronger than the screws on the hasp." "What are you talking about?" "Quit stalling and hurry up. I want to know how it works." "How what works?" "Hurry up, Ali. I'll see you there." "Where? Roger, where? I don't know what you're talking about." "And boobo, boobo, boobo to you," shouted Roger. He dived back into the rain. Why didn't I think of it? Sneaking off so she wouldn't have to let anyone else take turns. What a fantastic job. Must be donkey's years old. Ought to be in a museum. More a scooter than a bike. The motorcycle was propped in a corner. The petrol tank, a tin bottle, rested on a platform behind the saddle. The wheels were small, and the handlebars were like those of an ordinary bicycle with cable brakes, and when Roger squeezed, there was no tension. I see. Blocks missing. Now, what's this other nonsense she's rigged up? An owl's tea party? In the middle of the room stood a glass-fronted case, and inside the case was a stuffed owl. It was a huge bird, and its yellow eyes were browed with long ear tufts like horns. There was a faded handwritten label on the glass which said, "Eagle Owl, Boobo Boobo Boobo, the Bryn Ghost, laid by Ely Kinnock Grand Prix 12 bore at 60 feet. The girl's a nutter. Alison's paper owls were ranged about the case, their stylized heads intent, as if they were an audience for the eagle owl. Wait a minute. Who was in here yesterday? Ali was with us when we heard that noise. Roger squatted to look more closely at the owls. Each owl had made a mark with its tail in the dust, and these marks could be followed as lines along the floor, and the lines curved and wove a pattern, and it was a pattern that had the balance and precision of iron filings in the field of a magnet, or of petals in a flower, and the magnet, or the heart of the flower from which all lines started and to which all lines came, was the eagle owl in its glass case. Roger looked at the motorcycle. It was smeared clean where he had touched it, and the floor showed where he had stood and walked, and all the rest was the unbroken dust of years. The room was darkened from behind him. "Careful, Ali," said Roger. "I've been stupid. There's something up. I'm sorry. I thought you'd done it. Clear out, quick." The anorak muffled his head,
and he had to turn his whole body to see her. "Ally, shift! Ally!" The doorway was blocked by a figure hooded and draped in oilskins. Roger jumped back. It was Nancy. She stood there, a ground sheet slung over her, holding a poker in her hand, and her eyes were as grey as the dust. "What do you want?" said Roger. Nancy ran forward and swung the poker at the case. The glass exploded, and the eagle-owl flew up as a cloud of sawdust and feathers, and Nancy lashed about her at the paper models which winged in the air around the leaping woman and the dead bird that filled the room and stuck to her wet clothing and even to her skin and to her hair. Roger huddled against the motorcycle, his arms crossed over his head to keep off the blows, but Nancy was fighting the swirled dust. She said nothing. Then at once she staggered to the door. Roger followed, choking on the fine down that had caught in his throat. Nancy was on the lawn, still hitting the air, and the rain fell in solid rods of water. Gwyn scraped the bowl for the last cornflake. He took a swig from the milk bottle. The door of the kitchen banged. He heard a gasp, and his mother fell into the kitchen. She swore and beat at an oilskin that shrouded her. Both Nancy and the ground sheet were deep in feathers. Those that had been kept from the rain drifted about the kitchen, soaring in the heat of the stove. Nancy struggled out of the oilskin. A wet piece of hair covered one eye and clung to her mouth. She scrubbed at it with a feathered hand. "Get your mac," she said. She went upstairs. Gwyn watched the tawny feathers drift about the kitchen. He heard his mother in the flat and the squeak of a strap, then 2 bumps. She moved onto the landing and came down slowly, pulling a weight from step to step. Gwyn sat at the table. She had put on her mackintosh and a plastic rain hat, which tied under the chin. "Come along," she said. "Carry them cases." "Where are we going?" said Gwyn. "Aber. That's tomorrow. Shut your row and do as you're told." "How are we going?" "Taxi to the station." "That's 20 miles. How are you getting a taxi?" "Telephone. Move yourself, boy." "Telephone's by the shop and it's raining," said Gwyn. "I'll not stay another minute," said Nancy. "Fetch your mac and them cases, or you will have a leathering, big as you are." "I'm not coming," said Gwyn. "You can look after your own cases. I'm staying with my dad." "What's that, boy?" "My dad ran away," said Gwyn. "I shan't. I don't want to end up like him. Or you." Nancy caught Gwyn at the side of the head. The blow knocked him off the chair. Nancy took his mackintosh from behind and threw it at him. "Get up," she said. "Carry them cases." "Why couldn't you ask properly the first time?" said Gwyn. "I'll carry the cases, but you'll see." They set off along the drive. Gwyn had never seen rain spread visible in the sky, and its life was something he could feel as it dropped between him and the mountains. He watched it all the way to the telephone box. She was inside the box when Gwyn reached it. Waterfalls leapt at the skyline, where the day before there had been damp runnels. Gwyn thought of the black hiding. Nancy opened the door. "Taxi's coming," she said. "You wait there and mind them cases." The door sighed and shut her in. "Hurry up," said the driver. 20 minutes, and we shan't get through for the rain." The taxi started down the valley. The road was narrow, with hedges on either side, and it twisted up and down to find a way between the mountains and the river. The taxi had gone half a mile when the driver braked hard on a bend, throwing Nancy and Gwyn against the door. "Careful, you fool!" The taxi stopped. A tree had fallen across the road, and telephone wires coiled along the ground. 2 men stood at the other side of the hedge. "What the thump's going on here?" said the driver. "She slept when we were dropping her. Her roots, all the soil washed out by rain." The driver went to Nancy. "What do you want to do, missus?" "Go the other side, then, over the pass." "Over the pass? That's dangerous in this weather. Expensive." "You go over that pass," said Nancy. The driver reversed the taxi round the corner and stopped. There was a tree across the road. The driver climbed out and shouted, but no one answered, and there was no one in sight. "Well, missus, that's it." "That's it, Mum." Nancy tugged at the door to open it. "Where you going, Mum?" She scrambled over the trunk and began to run back towards the house. "What about money?" the taxi driver shouted. Gwyn followed Nancy and said nothing, and she did not turn her head, but when she reached the front drive gate, she hurried past it. Gwyn ran to catch up. "Where you going? Where you think? You can't walk the pass in this weather." The rain fell so that only hedges and trees could be seen, and the fields were white. "What am I supposed to do?" "Do what you like, boy. Hugh says I got to stay. You stay, then." "You don't care?" They were level with the back drive gate. "You don't care nothing for me? For him? For this place?" "You never cared." "There isn't a pound notes in London." "I'm staying, ma'am. I'm staying." Nancy receded from him, leaving him at the gate. "Ma'am!" She turned, but did not stop. She walked backwards up the road, shouting, and the rain washed the air clean of her words and dissolved her haunted face, broke the dark line of her into webs that left no stain. And Gwyn watched for a while the unmarked place where she had been, then climbed over the gate. Alison sat in the window, toweling her hair. She had heard a lot of movement in the house, and Roger had slammed in and out of his bedroom and was now running a bath. Nancy appeared on the drive and hurried away, and Gwyn followed more slowly with a case in each hand. He followed Nancy along the drive, past the stables, out of sight. Alison went downstairs to the first landing. The bath taps roared. "Roger!" "What?" He coughed and hawked. "I think they've gone now," said Alison. "Nancy and Gwyn, slipping off a day early when there's no one here. Mummy'll be livid. What shall we do?" "I'm having a bath. These blasted feathers." "Roger, shall I go after them?" Roger was coughing too hard to answer. Alison went to the cloakroom for her anorak, and then out across the lawn. The rain was like a wall. The road dropped between high banks. At the bottom was a bridge, and Alison saw a man grow out of the rain and stone as she came near. "Hello," said Hugh. "Wet, isn't it?" "Have you seen Nancy and Gwyn?" said Alison. "I think they're leaving." "They'll be back soon," said Hugh. "Now, why are you getting so wet? You're not used to it like me. You'll be catching chill. I'm going back to the house. Come along now." He turned Alison by her arm. "I got something for you," he said. "Present." "A present? For me?" said Alison. "It's not my birthday." "It's mean people who must wait for birthdays," said Hugh. No. This is just a present." They reached the back of the stables. Hugh took out a key-ring and fanned the keys. They were all worn smooth from his pocket. "Look," said Alison. "That door's open." "Yes, she's loose now," said Hugh. "I must tell Roger. What's in it?" "Nothing," said Hugh. He unlocked his own low green door and steered Alison inside. It was a room of bare stone and a sloping roof with massive cross beams, and at first there was no suggestion that it was lived in. There was no furniture, but planks side by side bridged two beams, and on them Alison saw blankets and a sack of straw for a pillow. "You live here?" she said. "Yes," said Hugh. "Always." "But there's nowhere to sit or to cook, no water, no fire. How do you manage? What happens in winter?" "Winter is a cold time, yes," said Hugh. "Where do you keep things?" said Alison. "I got all the valley to keep things in," said Hugh. "But special things, here." He rummaged in the blankets. "Present for you," he said. "I don't want it," said Alison. "That's a beastly trick." Hugh held out the box. "It is yours," he said. "The present is inside." "I know what's inside. I don't want it. Don't bring it near me." Hugh opened the box. "It is special present from the boy. He asked special. All I done is put that old lace on." "What?" Alison looked down at the box which Hugh held in front of her. The polished slate glowed, and the shape of brow and eye stood clear in the dim light. A leather bootlace was threaded through the hole so that the pendant could be worn. "He is saying it is very old." Hugh took the pendant out of the box. "It's too awful. I can't bear it." "It is yours. The boy said to give it you for present."
No.
He wants you to have it, but he's shy to give himself.
Put it away, please, it's too much.
No, very cheap, nothing at all. You give her, he is saying, and tell her it is from me. He's a nice boy.
No, please, not.
Hugh lifted the pendant and slipped the bootlace over her head. There, present for you. Roger put on clean clothes. The barbs of feather had lodged everywhere, and the dust and smell were still foul in his throat. He opened the bedroom window to clear the air, and he saw Hugh Half-Bacon come from the back of the stables. The rain moved behind him. The earth boiled, and he was carrying Alison over his shoulder.
"What's wrong?" Roger called.
"She fainted there. It was present from the boy, then wallop, she fainted."
"Is she hurt?"
"Let us in, quick."
Roger ran to the kitchen.
"Bar the door,"
said Hugh.
He laid Alison on the table.
"What's up with her?" said Roger. "Who scratched her face?"
Alison's cheek was scored with parallel red lines, but they seemed to be under the skin. There was no bleeding. "Go fetch the boy," said Hugh. "Tell him be quick."
"She wants a doctor," said Roger.
"Go fetch that boy," shouted Hugh. He marched Roger to the door and threw him outside.
"It's wet, you crackpot. Let me in."
Hugh had bolted the door.
"Gwyn! Gwyn! Gwyn!"
Roger searched the garden as far as the wood. Gwyn was climbing over the gate from the road.
"Gwyn!"
Gwyn sat on the gate.
"Gwyn, Half-Bacon wants you. He says be quick. The kitchen. Wait for me."
But Gwyn went without speaking to Roger. Below him the wood held a noise that came closer, yet was hard to place among the trees, and the rain and the river crashed in flood, and the one noise itself was the total of all its sounds. It was the noise of a wind on the pass, and its echo before it in the valley. It was the noise of owls hunting, though he had never heard so many. Never a wood of owls.
"Hugh! Hugh, man! Hugh!
Roger caught up with Gwyn while Hugh was unfastening the bolts.
"What is it, Hugh? What's happened?"
"Come in, boy." Alison lay on the table, covered with Hugh's jacket. Feathers clung to her and drifted round her. Hugh brushed them off, and they circled with the convection currents and came back to her. "It is the power," said Hugh. "It's in her now, bad. This is it, boy."
"What do you want me to do?"
said Gwyn. "Help her."
"Her there? Or her outside?"
"They are the same now," said Hugh. The wind hit the house. Blossom and twigs flew by, stripped from the bushes. The tendrils of clematis cracked on the walls, and leaves stuck to the window and skylight in a green autumn. More leaves came.
"I've stayed to help you in the valley, not this lot," said Gwyn. "These two are nothing."
"You are the three. You have made this together," said Hugh.
"I'm not doing anything for them. I've finished."
Roger brushed the feathers away from Alison. They circled and clung, the owl dance he had found in the dust. They were moving on the ceiling and the walls, and he began to see the patterns that had followed Hugh in the rain. Eyes and wings and sharpness, winged eyes, yellow and blackness curved, all in the rafters and the wall and the feathers everywhere. There had never been so many feathers. He brushed them from Alison's cheek. She cried out, and he saw 3 lines scored from brow to neck, and on her hands, and no break in the skin.
"Stop jabbering, you, and do something," said Roger. "Get these feathers off. Get them off."
"I am not knowing what to do," said Hugh.
"You said you did know," said Gwyn. "What's gone wrong?"
"You."
"Why me? I'm here. I've not run away. You said this was my valley, and I've not run away. Show me what I've to do."
"I can't say. I only feel. Always it is owls, always we are destroyed. Why must she see owls and not flowers? Always it is the same."
"What is it you want me to do?" said Gwyn.
"Look to her. Comfort her."
"I can't, man. Anything else? You don't know what these two have done. I can't touch her."
Alison trembled. Claw marks dragged at her legs. "She is coming and will use what she finds, and you have only hate in you," said Hugh. Always, and always, and always. You didn't say it would be like this, said Gwyn. I can't. Try. Comfort. No, comfort. Gwyn shook his head. The skylight smashed under a branch, but the wires bonded in the glass kept out the weight that pressed to enter, and in the darkness the feathers and the eyes and the claws hung and moved. The kitchen was swept with rain. There was no colour in Alison's face, except for the scratches. Her breath came quick and shallow. "Can't you stop it?" said Roger. "He can," said Hugh, "but he's not wanting." "Why not?" "He was hurt too much." Roger put out his hand, but Gwyn ignored him. "Gwyn," Roger spoke quietly, "it's my fault. It was me, not Ellie. She never laughed at you. It wasn't like I said. I twisted it round. I'm sorry. Don't let it happen, Gwyn. If you really can stop it, don't let it happen." Gwyn turned his head and looked at Roger. Roger saw the question form in his eyes, and he saw that Gwyn knew. "All right, Gwyn?" The blue of the eyes froze, and in a slow voice Gwyn said, "Get lost, Mummy's boy." The walls were shedding their texture and taking another in the pouncing feathers. Gwyn spoke again, but Roger could scarcely hear across the darkness. "Yes, yes, Gwyn." The back of his head and all his spine were hollow. There was bile in his throat. He could do nothing to answer the words. He could only shore his mind against them, because if he did not, he would be spilled by the bitter dark. "And how is the Birmingham bell? Still ringing?" "Yes, Gwyn." He waited, but there was no more. And in the calm of the pains clearing, he found no anger. Gwyn stood alone. Hugh crouched by the stove. Roger looked at them both, the man and the boy. "You poor devils," he said. He went to Alison and gathered the feathers that lay on her. "You poor devils." "He's hurt too much. She wants to be flowers, and you make her owls, and she is at the hunting." "Is that it?" said Roger. "Is that all it is? As easy as that? And so without end, without end, without end." "Hey, Allie, did you hear?" Roger brushed the feathers aside. "You've got it back to front, you silly gubbins. She's not owls. She's flowers. Flowers. Flowers, Allie." He stroked her forehead. "You're not birds, you're flowers. You've never been anything else. Not owls. Flowers. That's it. Don't fret." Alison stirred. "Oh, yes, they are flowers, and you know it. Flowers, Allie. Quietly now. Flowers. 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 Gentle. Flowers." He pulled Hugh's jacket higher and turned the collar to keep off the rain. Alison tugged it down between her shoulder and chin. Roger laughed. "Flowers, flowers, that's the way." The marks paled on her skin, and tightness went from her face as she breathed to the measure of his hand on her brow. "That's better. There now. Yes, yes. Of course they're flowers. What made you think those plates could be anything else? Why didn't you cut the pattern into flowers right at the start, you silly girl?" "By damn," said Hugh. Something touched Roger's hand. He started to brush it away, but there were too many. He looked up. "Hello, Allie." And the room was full of petals, from skylight and rafters, and all about them a fragrance, and petals, flowers falling, broom, meadowsweet, falling, flowers of the oak.